When a CEO whispers, "Take me home or you're fired," to a maintenance supervisor in a hotel bar, it sounds like abuse of power. But when her hands won't stop shaking and her eyes can't focus, it becomes something else entirely. A desperate plea from someone who spent so long being untouchable that she's forgotten how to ask for help. Tonight, Ethan Parker has 60 seconds to decide. Follow the rules and call for help she's begging him not to summon, or trust his instincts with a woman whose next breath might be her last. If you want to see how one choice in a hotel bar reshapes two lives and an entire company, stay with me until the end. And when you do, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The Regency Hotel bar had the kind of quiet that money bought. Soft jazz filtering through invisible speakers. Amber lighting that made everyone look like they had fewer problems than they did. And bartenders who knew when to pour and when to pretend they hadn't noticed anything at all. It was the last place Ethan Parker expected to spend his Thursday evening, but his truck had other plans. A blown radiator hose meant waiting for a tow, and the hotel lobby offered better coffee than the gas station across the street. He'd chosen the bar because it was quieter than the lobby, because he could nurse a ginger ale in peace while he waited for the text from the mechanic. At 34, Ethan had learned to find calm in unexpected places. 5 years of single fatherhood did that to a man, taught him that plans were suggestions, and peace was something you grabbed in 10-minute increments between phone calls about science projects and permission slips. The bar was nearly empty. A business traveler in the corner worked through emails with the glazed determination of someone who'd given up on work-life balance years ago. A couple 2 tables over spoke in low tones about flight connections and morning meetings. And then there was her. Ethan had noticed her immediately, the way anyone would notice a figure that seemed to shimmer with its own gravity. She sat 3 seats down, back straight, shoulders squared, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his monthly salary. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that looked effortless, but probably took 20 minutes, and her hands, he noticed her hands because they were wrapped around a glass of water like it might try to escape. She was shaking. Not obviously, not in a way the bartender seemed to notice as he polished glasses at the far end of the bar. But Ethan saw it. The tremor in her fingers, the way she kept blinking like she was trying to clear something from her vision, the shallow rise and fall of her chest. He knew that face. Everyone who worked for Morrison Industries knew that face. Claire Rowe, CEO, the woman who'd taken her father's failing manufacturing company and turned it into a billion-dollar enterprise. She'd been on the cover of Forbes twice, had given a TED Talk about ethical leadership that Ethan's daughter Maya had watched for a school project, and apparently made board members cry during quarterly reviews. She looked like she was about to collapse. Ethan glanced at his phone. The mechanic had texted, another 40 minutes. He looked back at Claire Rowe, watched her shoulders rise with an inhale that seemed to take too much effort, and felt something tighten in his chest. He'd seen this before. Different context, same signs. His sister, 8 years ago, right before she'd gone into anaphylactic shock from a bee sting. The way normal breathing became work. The way fear tried to masquerade as control. He should mind his business. This was Claire Rowe, a woman who had an entire floor of executives whose job was to handle her problems. She probably had a driver waiting outside, an assistant on speed dial, a whole infrastructure designed to make sure she never had to ask a maintenance supervisor for help. But her hands were shaking harder now. Ethan picked up his ginger ale and moved 2 seats closer, close enough to speak without raising his voice. "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you all right?" She turned her head slowly, like it took concentration. Up close, he could see what the dim lighting had hidden. Her pupils were different sizes. Her skin had a grayish tint under the makeup, and there was a fine sheen of sweat on her forehead. "I'm fine." Her voice was crisp, automatic, the kind of response that had probably worked 1,000 times before. "Thank you for your concern." She turned back to her water glass, dismissing him with the efficiency of someone who'd spent decades making people disappear with a glance. But her hand missed the glass on the first try, fingers closing on air before adjusting. "You're not fine," Ethan said quietly. "And I think you know it." She went very still. Then slowly, she looked at him again. This time, really looked. Her eyes scanning his face, his Morrison Industries polo shirt, the calluses on his hands wrapped around a ginger ale instead of something stronger. "You work for me." It wasn't a question. Her voice was softer now, some of the armor dropping away. "Maintenance. I've seen you in the reports. Parker, right? You wrote that proposal about upgrading the safety systems in Building 3. Ethan blinked. He'd submitted that proposal 6 months ago through his supervisor, never expecting it to reach anyone above middle management. "Yes, ma'am? Ethan Parker." "It was good work." She drew a shallow breath, held it, released it carefully. "Comprehensive. You actually understand how people work, not just how systems work." "Thank you, ma'am." "Claire." She closed her eyes briefly. "If we're having this conversation, you should call me Claire." "This conversation being?" "The one where I'm about to ask you for help I have no right to ask for." She opened her eyes, and for the first time, Ethan saw past the CEO to the person underneath. Frightened, vulnerable, human. "I need you to take me home." Ethan felt ice slide down his spine. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. A CEO didn't ask a maintenance supervisor to drive her home. Not like this. Not with her hands shaking and her breathing shallow and her eyes unable to focus properly. "Ma'am." "Claire. Think you need a hospital. Whatever's happening." "No." The word came out sharp, desperate. "No hospitals, no ambulances, no public scenes." She gripped the edge of the bar, knuckles white. "If I show up in an ER tonight, it'll be on the internet in an hour. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. They're already looking for reasons to remove me. My father's old partners, they want control back, and they'll use anything to paint me as unstable. But if you're sick, I'm having a reaction to something I ate. I know what this is. I've had it before." Her voice wavered. "I just need to get home. I have medication there. I can't drive. I tried. I made it to the parking lot before I realized I can't see straight enough to be safe." Ethan's mind raced. Every piece of professional training he'd ever received said, "Call for help." This wasn't his responsibility. This wasn't his place. If something went wrong, if she collapsed, if she was more seriously ill than she realized, "Please." The word was barely a whisper. Claire Rowe, who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions, was begging. "Take me home or you're fired." The words hung in the air between them. Ethan saw her face change immediately. Shock at what she'd just said. Shame. Horror. She'd meant it as something else, he could see that. Desperation trying to form words and coming out all wrong. "I didn't mean..." She pressed her palm to her forehead. "God, I didn't mean it like that. I'm not threatening you, I don't know how to ask for this. I don't know how to be this vulnerable with someone who works for me. But you're here, and you noticed, and everyone else just sees what I want them to see." Ethan looked at her, really looked, saw the tremor that had spread from her hands to her shoulders, saw the way she was breathing in short, controlled bursts like she was rationing air, saw the fear she was trying so hard to contain. He thought about Maya, about the science project on corporate leadership, about the woman in the TED Talk who'd said that real power was knowing when to ask for help. He thought about his sister, about the 6 minutes between when she'd said she was fine and when she'd stopped breathing, about how he'd learned to trust his gut over other people's pride. "Where do you live?" he asked. Relief flooded her face, so intense it was almost painful to witness. 15 minutes from here. Oakmont Drive. The house at the end." "Can you walk?" "Yes. I just can't coordinate well enough to drive. Everything's starting to blur at the edges." Ethan pulled out his phone and texted the mechanic. Something came up. "We'll pick up truck tomorrow." Then he stood, offering his arm with the same careful courtesy he used with Maya when she was sick. "Slow and steady. If you feel worse, you tell me immediately. No pride, no politics. If this gets serious, I'm calling 911 whether you like it or not. Understood?" She nodded, accepting his arm with a grip that was stronger than he expected. "Understood." The walk through the lobby felt like it took an hour. Claire moved carefully, deliberately, one foot in front of the other with the concentration of someone navigating a tightrope. The night clerk glanced up, then away, showing the studied disinterest of someone who'd seen stranger things. The parking lot was cool, a breeze carrying the scent of rain. Ethan's truck was still sitting by the curb, dead radiator hose and all. My vehicle's not operational. Is yours nearby? Black Mercedes, Section B. She gestured vaguely. Keys are in my purse. They found it 3 rows over, sleek, expensive, the kind of car that probably had more technology than Ethan's apartment. He helped Claire into the passenger seat, adjusting it back when she struggled with the controls, then slid behind the wheel and took a moment to familiarize himself with the dash. You've never driven a Mercedes before? Claire's voice was quiet, observation without judgment. No, ma'am. Closest I've come is changing the oil in one. You'll do fine. Just please be careful. This was my father's car. It's one of the few things I kept. Ethan heard the weight in those words, filed it away, and started the engine. It purred to life with the quiet confidence of German engineering. Oakmont Drive, you said? Yes, take Madison to Riverside, then left on Oakmont. House at the end. You'll know it. It's the only one with the lights still on. The drive was silent except for the soft jazz still playing from the car's sound system and Claire's breathing, shallow, measured, controlled with visible effort. Ethan kept his peripheral vision on her, watching for any sign that things were getting worse. Her hands were clasped in her lap now, trembling but stable. Her eyes were half closed, but she was tracking their movement through the city. Why did you notice? She asked after they'd been driving for 5 minutes. In the bar. Everyone else looked right past me, even the bartender, but you noticed. My sister had a severe allergic reaction 8 years ago. Bee sting. She told everyone she was fine right up until she collapsed. Ethan took the turn onto Riverside carefully. I learned to recognize the signs, the shallow breathing, the tremor, the way you were holding yourself too still. Is she all right? Your sister? She's fine now, carries an EpiPen everywhere, but it was close. 6 minutes of not being able to breathe is a long time. Claire was quiet for a moment. I carry one too. 2 actually. They're in my medicine cabinet, at home, where they do me absolutely no good right now. What did you eat? Shellfish. I'm severely allergic, have been since childhood. The hotel restaurant swore their risotto was safe, but something got cross-contaminated. I tasted it immediately, stopped eating, but it only takes a trace amount. She drew a careful breath. I took Benadryl in the bathroom. It's helping a little, but it's not enough. I need the epinephrine. How long ago did you eat it? 40 minutes? Maybe 45. Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. Anaphylaxis could progress slowly or explosively, and there was no way to predict which until it happened. If your throat starts to close, if you can't breathe, then you call 911 and I deal with the consequences. She turned her head to look at him. But if we can avoid that, if I can get to my medication and this stabilizes, then maybe I get through tomorrow's board meeting. Maybe I keep the company my father built. Maybe all those employees who depend on Morrison Industries don't lose their jobs because the old guard wants to liquidate assets for short-term profit. That's a lot of maybes to bet your life on. It's my life, my choice. Fair enough. Ethan took the left onto Oakmont, and the neighborhood changed immediately. Trees older than he was, houses set back from the road behind walls and gates. The kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. But if this goes sideways, I'm not living with the guilt of letting you die to save a board meeting. We clear on that? Crystal. She almost smiled. You're very direct for someone talking to his CEO. You hired me to maintain buildings, not to manage your feelings. Besides, you asked me to call you Claire. I did, didn't I? She sighed. It's been so long since anyone did. Even my executive team calls me Ms. Rowe. The house at the end of Oakmont Drive was exactly what Ethan expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Yes, it was large, sprawling even, with the kind of architecture that whispered old money and good taste. But it also had lights on in multiple windows, a garden that looked lived in rather than professionally maintained, and a front porch with a swing that had seen actual use. He pulled into the circular drive and killed the engine. We made it. How are you feeling? Worse. Claire's voice was tight. I need to get inside, now. Ethan was around to her side of the car in seconds, pulling the door open. She was paler than before, her breathing more labored, and when she tried to stand, her legs buckled. He caught her, taking her weight easily, muscle memory from 5 years of carrying a sleeping child upstairs kicking in. "I've got you. Where's the medication?" "Upstairs bathroom, master bedroom. Can you—" "Which door?" "Front door's unlocked. Alarm code is 1015. Bedroom's top of the stairs, end of the hall." Ethan scooped her up completely, ignoring her weak protest, and carried her toward the house. She weighed almost nothing, or maybe adrenaline was making him stronger. The front door opened easily, and the alarm panel beeped a warning. He shifted Claire's weight, punched in 1015, and the beeping stopped. The house was beautiful inside. Hardwood floors, artwork that was probably original, furniture that looked comfortable rather than just expensive. But Ethan didn't stop to admire it. He took the stairs 2 at a time, found the master bedroom, and laid Claire on the bed with as much care as he'd use with Maya. "Bathroom," she gasped. "Medicine cabinet, orange case." He found it in seconds. A bright orange emergency case with epinephrine auto-injector printed on the side. He grabbed it and was back at her side immediately. "I've done this before. My sister. But I need you to confirm. Thigh, through clothing if necessary. Hold for 3 seconds?" Claire nodded, her hand already pulling her skirt up to expose her thigh. "Do it." Ethan removed the auto-injector from its case, pulled off the safety cap, and pressed it firmly against her outer thigh. The click was loud in the quiet room, and he felt the mechanism engage. He counted 1, 2, 3, then removed it and set it aside. Claire's whole body seemed to shudder. Then slowly, her breathing began to ease. The change wasn't immediate, but it was there, the terrible tightness in her chest loosening, color starting to return to her face. "Oh, thank God," she whispered. "Thank God." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his own hand shaking now with delayed adrenaline. "How do you feel?" "Like I can breathe again." She closed her eyes. "The tightness is fading. I can feel it working." "You need to go to the hospital. Even with the epinephrine, you should be monitored." "I know. I will. Just give me a few minutes. Let me make sure this is stable." She opened her eyes, looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You saved my life. A maintenance supervisor I've met exactly once just saved my life." "You would have made it home eventually. Someone would have helped." "Would they?" She pushed herself up slightly, leaning against the headboard. "I was alone in that bar for 20 minutes before you arrived. People saw me. The bartender. The couple 2 tables over. They saw a woman in a suit with a glass of water, and they assumed I was fine because that's what I've spent my entire life teaching people to assume." Her voice cracked slightly. "You saw past it. Why?" Ethan thought about how to answer that. About Maya, about single parenthood, about learning to see the needs people didn't say out loud because a 6-year-old couldn't always articulate when something was wrong. About his sister, about 6 minutes that changed how he saw the world. "I've learned to pay attention," he said finally, "to trust my gut when something feels off. And you felt off. Your hands were shaking, your breathing was wrong, and you were holding yourself like someone trying very hard not to fall apart." "I was." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I am. The board meeting tomorrow, you have to understand if I lose control of the company, everything changes. My father built Morrison Industries on the principle that a company's first responsibility is to its people, workers, families, communities. The old guard doesn't believe that. They want to strip it for parts, move production overseas, maximize shareholder value at any cost." "How many people work for Morrison Industries?" 4,632. "I know the number because I think about them every single day. Every decision I make affects their lives, their families, their futures." She closed her eyes again. "And tomorrow 5 men who think I'm too young, too female, and too idealistic are going to try to take that responsibility away from me." Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing. He'd known Morrison Industries was a good place to work, stable, fair, with benefits that actually meant something. He'd known that Claire Rowe had a reputation for being tough, but ethical. But he hadn't known the details, hadn't understood the politics at play. "What do you need?" he asked. She opened her eyes, surprise clear on her face. "What?" "Right now. What do you need to get through tonight and into tomorrow ready to fight?" Claire stared at him. No one's asked me that in I don't know how long. Everyone has opinions about what I should do, strategies I should employ, alliances I should build, but no one just asks what I need. I'm asking. She took a breath, deep, full, evidence that the epinephrine was working. I need to not be alone tonight. The next few hours are critical. If there's going to be a secondary reaction, it'll happen now. I should have someone here, someone who knows what happened and can call for help if things go wrong. What about family, friends, your executive team? My father died 3 years ago. My mother passed when I was 12. I have aunts and uncles who'd be happy to see me fail because they think they deserve the company more than I did. Her smile was bitter. And my executive team works for me. The moment they know I had a medical emergency, it becomes a liability, information they have to manage, a weakness the board could exploit. So you're completely alone. I'm completely alone. She met his eyes. Which is why I'm asking a maintenance supervisor I barely know to stay in my house tonight and make sure I don't die. And before you remind me how inappropriate this is, how it could be misconstrued, how you have every right to refuse, I know, all of it. I'm still asking. Ethan thought about Maya, who was spending the night at her best friend Zoe's house, safe and happy, and not expecting him home until tomorrow afternoon. He thought about his truck, still sitting at the hotel with a blown hose. He thought about all the reasons this was a terrible idea and the one reason that outweighed them all. A woman who'd just had a severe allergic reaction shouldn't be alone. I'll stay, he said. But you're going to the hospital first thing in the morning, non-negotiable. I don't care about your board meeting or your politics. You get checked by a doctor, you get cleared, then you go fight your battles. Deal. Relief flooded her face. Thank you, Ethan. Truly. Don't thank me yet. I'm going to be checking on you every hour, waking you up, being generally annoying. It's what I do with Maya when she's sick. Maya's your daughter? Yeah, she's 9. Staying at a friend's house tonight, which is the only reason I'm able to be here. Claire's expression softened. You're a good father, I can tell. I try. She makes it easy. She's brilliant, funny, asks about 1,000 questions a day. Ethan stood. Speaking of which, I should text her goodnight before she goes to sleep. And you should change into something comfortable. The epinephrine's working, but you need to rest. There's a guest room across the hall. Clean sheets, attached bathroom. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Claire pushed herself up, steadier now. And Ethan, when this is over, when tomorrow's done and I've either won or lost, remind me to thank you properly, because right now gratitude doesn't even begin to cover what I owe you. You don't owe me anything. It's just being human. That's where you're wrong. She stood, testing her balance, satisfied when she stayed upright. Being human is exactly what you owe someone. It's the most important debt there is, 'cause... An hour later, Ethan sat in Claire's guest room, which was nicer than his entire apartment, and texted Maya goodnight. She responded with a flood of emojis and a photo of her and Zoe making ridiculous faces, and he felt the familiar ache of missing her even though he'd see her tomorrow. He'd checked on Claire twice already. The first time she'd been changing into pajamas and had called through the door that she was fine. The second time, she'd been sitting up in bed with a laptop, reviewing documents for the morning meeting. You should be resting, he'd said. I should be doing a lot of things, she'd replied, but if I'm going to walk into that boardroom tomorrow, I need to be prepared. Now, sitting in the quiet guest room, Ethan thought about the strangeness of the night. 12 hours ago, his biggest problem had been a blown radiator hose. Now he was staying in a mansion, having saved his CEO's life, about to spend the night making sure she didn't have a secondary allergic reaction. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then thought better of it. Hello? Mr. Parker, this is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm Ms. Rowe's personal physician. She just called me about tonight's incident. I need to ask you some questions. Ethan sat up straighter. Of course. For the next 10 minutes, he described everything he'd observed. Claire's symptoms, the timeline, his decision to use the auto-injector, her current condition. Dr. Chen listened, asked clarifying questions, and finally sighed. You did exactly the right thing. The epinephrine was critical, and your decision not to delay was probably the difference between a manageable reaction and a medical emergency. A pause. Ms. Rowe tells me you're staying to monitor her tonight? Yes, ma'am. Good. I'm going to walk you through what to watch for. Secondary reactions can occur anywhere from 4 to 12 hours after the initial exposure. You'll need to check on her regularly, watch for a return of symptoms, and call 911 immediately if her breathing becomes compromised again. Ethan grabbed a notepad from the desk and started writing. For the next 15 minutes, Dr. Chen gave him a crash course in anaphylaxis monitoring. By the time they hung up, he had 3 pages of notes and a much clearer understanding of exactly how serious tonight had been. He checked on Claire again. She was still awake, still working, but she looked better, color fully returned, breathing normal, steady. Dr. Chen called, he said from the doorway. I know, I asked her to. Claire set the laptop aside. I wanted you to know what to watch for. This isn't just me being paranoid. Secondary reactions are real, and they can be serious. She explained, I've got it covered. He leaned against the doorframe. You should sleep, though. Your body's been through trauma. It needs rest to heal. After this page, I'm almost done with the financial projections. She looked up at him. You're very calm about all this. Most people would be freaking out. Maya had pneumonia when she was 6, spent 4 days in the hospital with oxygen saturation that kept dropping. After that, most medical situations feel manageable. He shrugged. Plus, you're stable. The medication worked. Now it's just a matter of making sure things stay stable. Just a matter, she repeated, almost smiling. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Check breathing, check alertness, call for help if either changes. Everything else is details. She did smile then. A real one. Tired, but genuine. I'm going to remember that. When the board starts throwing complexity at me tomorrow, I'll remember. Breathing, alertness, everything else is details. Good strategy for life in general, Ethan said. Now get some sleep. I'll check on you in an hour. He did. And the hour after that, and the one after that. Each time, Claire was asleep, breathing normally, color good. By 3 a.m, Ethan was confident the worst had passed. He dozed in the guest room chair, phone alarm set for hour intervals, prepared to wake at the slightest sound from across the hall. He thought about Maya, about tomorrow, about the strange turn his life had taken. He thought about Claire Rowe, powerful CEO, fighting to save her father's company and the livelihoods of 4,000 people. He thought about how small she'd looked in that bar, how terrified, how human. He thought about the choice he'd made, to help rather than walk away, to trust rather than judge, to see the person beneath the title. And as dawn crept through the guest room windows, painting the walls pale gold, Ethan wondered what the morning would bring. The first gray light of morning found Ethan in the kitchen, making coffee with the kind of quiet efficiency that came from years of early mornings with a child who needed breakfast before school. Claire's kitchen was a revelation, professional-grade appliances that actually got used, a spice rack organized by cuisine rather than alphabet, a refrigerator stocked with real food instead of takeout containers. Someone lived here, cooked here, found comfort here. He'd checked on Claire 20 minutes ago. Still sleeping, breathing easy, color normal. Dr. Chen had texted at 5:30 asking for an update, and he'd sent back a detailed report. All stable. No secondary symptoms. Patient resting comfortably. The coffee maker gurgled its final breath, and Ethan poured himself a cup, black, strong enough to compensate for exactly 2 hours of actual sleep. He stood at the window overlooking the garden, watching the sky shift from charcoal to pearl, and tried to organize his thoughts for the conversation he knew was coming. Claire Rowe would wake up, remember everything, and immediately try to process what it meant that her maintenance supervisor had spent the night in her house. She'd worry about impropriety, about optics, about whether he expected something in return. She'd probably try to pay him, or offer him a promotion he hadn't earned, or do something to restore the power dynamic that last night had completely shattered. He needed to head that off. Not because he wanted anything from her, but because he could already see how her mind would work, how she'd turn gratitude into transaction, how she'd need to quantify and repay a debt that couldn't be measured in dollars or job titles. "You're up early." Ethan turned. Claire stood in the doorway, wrapped in a robe that probably cost more than his truck was worth, hair loose around her shoulders, looking more human than he'd ever seen her. She was pale, but steady, and her eyes were clear. Habit, he said. Maya's an early riser. My body doesn't know how to sleep past 6 anymore. He gestured to the coffee pot. I made coffee. Hope that's all right. It's perfect. She moved into the kitchen, accepting the mug he poured for her. How do you take yours? Black? A man after my own heart. She took a sip, closed her eyes briefly. God, that's good. I don't know why coffee always tastes better when someone else makes it. Because you're not the one who had to measure and wait. Ethan leaned against the counter. How are you feeling? Alive. Thanks to you. She set the mug down. Dr. Chen texted me. She said you were incredibly thorough with your monitoring, that you knew exactly what to watch for and when to call if things changed. She gave good instructions. She also said most people would have panicked, that your calm probably kept me calmer than I would have been otherwise. Claire met his eyes. I don't remember a lot of last night clearly. The reaction, the fear, it's all kind of blurred. But I remember you. How steady you were. How you didn't make me feel stupid for being terrified. You weren't stupid. You were having a severe allergic reaction. Terror's a pretty reasonable response. You'd be surprised how many people in my life would disagree. She picked up her coffee again, cradling it like it might provide answers. There's an expectation that comes with this job, with this life. You're supposed to be unshakable. Problems get solved, crises get managed, emotions get compartmentalized. Fear is something you show to your therapist, not to the world. You don't have a therapist? I did. She retired last year. I keep meaning to find a new one. Claire smiled ruefully. But that would require admitting I need one, and admitting I need help with anything feels like handing ammunition to people who already think I'm not strong enough for this job. Ethan thought about that. About the loneliness of leadership, about the impossibility of being human when everyone needed you to be invincible. That sounds exhausting. It is. She took another sip of coffee. Which brings me to this morning. The board meeting starts at 9. I need to be there at 8:30 to review final numbers with my CFO, which means I have about 2 hours to shower, dress, prepare, and transform back into the woman who walked into that hotel bar last night. The one who was slowly suffocating? The one who looked like she had everything under control. Claire's voice was quiet. Perception is reality in my world, Ethan. If I walk into that boardroom looking shaken, if there's even a hint that something happened last night, the vultures will circle. They'll push for a medical evaluation, question my fitness to lead, use it as evidence that the stress of this job is too much for me. Is it? She looked at him sharply. Is what? Too much. The stress, the loneliness, the constant performance. He held her gaze. I'm not asking as an employee. I'm asking as someone who spent last night making sure you didn't die. Is this job worth what it's costing you? For a long moment, Claire was silent. Then she walked to the window, looking out at her garden where morning light was starting to paint the roses gold. My father used to bring me to the plant when I was little, before my mother died, when things were simpler. He'd walk the floor every single day, knew every worker by name, knew their families, their struggles, their dreams. He believed that a company was only as good as the people who built it. She turned back to face Ethan. When he got sick, when it became clear he wasn't going to recover, he made me promise something. He said the old guard would try to take over, would try to turn Morrison Industries into just another corporation where people were line items on a spreadsheet. He made me promise I'd fight them, that I'd remember what he built and why it mattered. That's a heavy promise. It's the only one that matters. Her voice was fierce now, alive with purpose. So yes, this job cost me. It cost me sleep and peace and probably years off my life. But those 4,632 people, they get to go home at night knowing their jobs are secure, their benefits are real, their work has meaning. That's worth fighting for. Ethan studied her. This woman who'd been terrified and vulnerable last night, who was armoring up now for battle, who carried the weight of thousands of lives on shoulders that looked too slim to bear it. Then you better win. She smiled, and it was the smile of a warrior. I intend to. But first, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. All right. Did anyone see us leave the hotel together? Did anyone see you bring me here? Is there any possibility that what happened last night could be misconstrued into something it wasn't? Ethan thought back. The nearly empty bar, the disinterested night clerk, the quiet drive through empty streets. The bartender might remember seeing us talk. The clerk saw us walk through the lobby, but it was late, the hotel was quiet, and neither of us were acting in a way that would have drawn attention. And this morning, if you leave now, I'm just a guy leaving a house early in the morning. Could be a friend, could be family, could be anyone. Without context, it's meaningless. Claire nodded slowly. I hate that this is even a consideration. I hate that I have to calculate the optics of being helped because people might twist it into something ugly. But that's the reality I live in. I know. Ethan finished his coffee, which is why I'm going to leave in about 30 minutes. I'll catch a cab back to the hotel, pick up my truck from the mechanic, and go collect my daughter from her sleepover. And if anyone ever asks about last night, the answer is simple. You had a medical emergency. I helped. End of story. You make it sound simple. It is simple. The rest is just noise. He rinsed his mug in the sink. But before I go, I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll actually go to the hospital after the board meeting, that you'll get checked out properly, not just tell Dr. Chen you're fine over the phone. Last night was serious, and you need to take it seriously. I will. I promise. She paused. And after that, when all this is done, then you get back to being CEO, and I get back to being maintenance supervisor, and life goes on. Just like that? Just like that? Ethan met her eyes. Unless you're planning to fire me for seeing you vulnerable, some CEOs might. I'm not some CEOs. Claire's voice was soft. And vulnerability isn't weakness. My father taught me that. I just forget sometimes. They stood in the quiet kitchen, morning light streaming through windows, coffee cups cooling on the counter. Two people who'd shared something profound and inexplicable, who'd seen each other stripped of titles and pretense, who were about to walk back into their regular lives and pretend last night was just an anomaly. I should get ready, Claire said finally, and you should call that cab. Yeah, Ethan pulled out his phone. Good luck today, with the board, with all of it. Thank you. She turned to leave, then stopped. Ethan, what you did last night, staying, monitoring, just being present, that was extraordinary. And I know you don't want gratitude or recognition or anything that complicates this, but I need you to know it mattered. You mattered. You would have done the same for me. I'd like to think so, but I'm not sure I would have noticed in the first place. I'm not sure I'm as good at seeing people as you are. She smiled. Something to work on. Then she was gone, and Ethan was alone in the kitchen calling a cab and trying to process the strange tenderness of the moment. The cab arrived 20 minutes later. Ethan left through the front door, pausing only to make sure it locked behind him. The morning was cool and clear, the kind of day that promised warmth later but held on to night's chill for now. He slid into the back seat and gave the driver the hotel's address. His phone buzzed. Maya, awake early and full of energy. Dad, when are you picking me up? Zoe's mom is making pancakes. Can I stay for breakfast? Of course, he texted back. I'll be there by 10. Love you. Love you too, with approximately 15 heart emojis. He smiled, pocketing the phone. This was real life. His daughter, pancakes, the mundane, beautiful normalcy of a Saturday morning. Last night had been an aberration, a moment outside time where the normal rules didn't apply. The hotel parking lot was busy now, business travelers checking out, families loading luggage, life moving forward with its usual momentum. Ethan paid the driver and walked to where his truck sat waiting, still dead, still needing that tow. He called the mechanic. Hey, it's Ethan Parker, about my truck. Already handled, the mechanic interrupted. Towed it first thing this morning. New hose is in, coolant's topped off. She's ready to roll. Swung by your place and left the keys in your mailbox like you asked. Ethan blinked. He hadn't asked. He'd completely forgotten about the truck after Claire's emergency. Thanks. What do I owe you? Already paid. Someone called it in last night, gave a credit card, said to take care of it and not to bother you until morning. The mechanic chuckled. Must be nice having friends with money. Yeah, Ethan said slowly. Well, must be. Thanks. He hung up and stood in the parking lot, pieces clicking into place. Claire must have called while he was dozing in the guest room. Must have handled it quietly, efficiently, the way she handled everything. No fuss, no drama, just a problem identified and solved. It should have annoyed him, the assumption that he needed help, the casual use of wealth to smooth over complications. But instead, he felt something else. Recognition. She'd seen a problem that her emergency had created for him and fixed it. Not out of obligation or guilt, but because that's what you did for people you cared about. His phone buzzed again. Not Maya this time. Unknown number. He answered. Hello? Mr. Parker, this is James Chen, CFO of Morrison Industries. The voice was crisp, professional, slightly stressed. Ms. Rowe asked me to call you. She wanted you to know that your truck has been repaired and the keys are at your apartment. She also wanted me to convey that if you need anything else, anything at all, you should contact my office directly. That's very kind, but not necessary. Ms. Rowe was quite insistent. A pause. She also asked me to tell you that the board meeting begins in 90 minutes, and she wanted you to know she's ready. Ethan heard what wasn't being said, that Claire was nervous, that she was reaching out in the only way she could, that this phone call was her way of maintaining connection without compromising either of their positions. Tell her good luck, he said, and tell her to remember what we talked about this morning. What you talked about? She'll know what I mean. Another pause. I'll relay the message. Thank you for your help last night, Mr. Parker. Miss Rowe didn't give me details, but she made it clear that you went above and beyond. That matters to those of us who care about her well-being. The call ended before Ethan could respond. He stood in the hotel parking lot, sun warming his shoulders, and wondered what Claire had told her CFO. Enough to convey gratitude clearly, not enough to reveal vulnerability. He caught a cab home, found his truck keys in the mailbox exactly as promised, and spent the next hour doing normal Saturday morning things. Shower, clean clothes, a grocery run for the week ahead. But his mind kept drifting back to that kitchen, to Claire's face in the morning light, to the weight of promises and the cost of leadership. At 9:45, he picked up Maya from Zoe's house. She burst out the front door like a small hurricane, all energy and excitement and stories about the sleepover. Dad, we stayed up until midnight, and Zoe's mom let us make our own pizza, and we watched 2 movies, and then we did makeovers, and I learned how to do a French braid. Want to see? Absolutely. Ethan knelt down, examining the slightly lopsided braid with appropriate seriousness. That's excellent work. It's very sophisticated. That's what Zoe's mom said. Maya threw her arms around his neck. I missed you, though. Even though I had so much fun, I still missed you. I missed you too, kiddo. He hugged her tight, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood. Ready to head home? Yes. Can we stop at the library? I finished all my books. Of course we can. They drove to the library, Maya chattering nonstop about her night, about school next week, about the science project she wanted to start on plate tectonics. Ethan listened with half his attention, making appropriate sounds of interest and asking questions when required, while the other half of his mind wondered how Claire's board meeting was going. Was she standing in front of those 5 men right now, defending her right to lead? Was she using the numbers and strategy she'd been reviewing last night? Was she thinking about what he'd said? Breathing, alertness, everything else as details? The library was quiet, the weekend morning crowd sparse. Maya made a beeline for the young adult section while Ethan browsed the new releases, not really seeing titles, just needing something to do with his hands. His phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. She won. That was it. 2 words. But they carried the weight of relief, of victory, of a promise kept and a battle survived. Ethan texted back, Good. Tell her congratulations. The response came immediately. She says to tell you thank you for everything. He didn't reply. What could he say that wouldn't complicate things, that wouldn't turn a simple act of human decency into something it wasn't? Instead, he pocketed his phone and went to find Maya, who'd accumulated a stack of books that would take her approximately 3 days to read. Find everything you need? He asked. Yes. Look, this one's about volcanoes, and this one's about a girl who solves mysteries, and this one is about the history of space exploration. She beamed up at him. Can we get ice cream after this? Sure. Why not? It was Saturday. Claire Rowe had won her board meeting, and his daughter wanted ice cream. Some days, life was exactly that simple. They checked out the books and drove to the ice cream shop, where Maya ordered mint chocolate chip and Ethan got coffee flavor because he was predictable like that. They sat at an outdoor table, sun warm on their faces, and Maya told him about her plans for the science project. "I want to build a model showing how tectonic plates move," she said, gesturing with her spoon, "with clay and cardboard and maybe some kind of mechanism that makes them shift. Mrs. Rodriguez said we could work in pairs, and Zoe wants to be my partner." "That sounds ambitious." "I know, but I think we can do it. We just need to plan it out really carefully." She took a bite of ice cream. "Like you always say, break big problems into small steps." "That's right," Ethan smiled. "When do you need to present it?" 3 weeks, so we need to start soon." She paused, studying him. "You seem distracted, Dad. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Just had an unusual night, that's all." "What kind of unusual?" Ethan considered how to answer. Maya was smart, perceptive, and he'd learned early that honesty worked better than deflection. "I helped someone who was having a medical emergency, made sure they got home safe and monitored them to make sure they didn't get worse." Maya's eyes widened. "Like when Aunt Sarah had the bee sting?" "Similar, yeah. Allergic reaction to food." "Were you scared?" "A little. But I knew what to do, so mostly I just focused on doing it." "That's what heroes do," Maya said seriously. "They get scared, but they do the right thing anyway." "We learned about that in social studies. Mrs. Rodriguez says real courage isn't not being afraid, it's being afraid and doing it anyway." "Mrs. Rodriguez is a smart woman." "The smartest." Maya finished her ice cream. "Is the person okay now?" "Yes, they're fine. Had a big important meeting this morning and they won." "Good." Maya nodded with satisfaction. "Then you did a good job, Dad. You should be proud." "Thanks, kiddo." They threw away their trash and headed home, where Maya immediately disappeared into her room to organize her new library books, while Ethan started on the mundane tasks of weekend life: laundry, dishes, meal prep for the week ahead. Normal, ordinary, grounding. His phone rang at 2 in the afternoon, Morrison Industries' main number. He almost didn't answer, then decided that was cowardly. "Hello?" "Mr. Parker, this is Janet Reeves, Ms. Rowe's executive assistant." The voice was warm, professional. "Ms. Rowe would like to meet with you Monday morning at 8. She asked me to schedule it as a private meeting in her office, not a formal review or evaluation. She said to tell you it's important but not urgent and that you're welcome to decline if you're uncomfortable." Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter. "What's this about?" She didn't say, but she was quite specific that it was a request, not a summons, and that you should feel free to say no. Which meant it was personal, not professional. Which meant Claire wanted to talk about last night, about what it meant, about where they went from here. "Tell her I'll be there," Ethan said. 8 o'clock Monday. "Excellent. I'll send you a calendar invite with the office location. Is there anything you need? Coffee preference? Dietary restrictions?" "Just coffee is fine. Black." "Noted. Thank you, Mr. Parker." The call ended, and Ethan stood in his kitchen trying to figure out what he felt. Curious, definitely. A little apprehensive, uncertain about what Claire wanted to say or what he wanted to hear. Maya appeared in the doorway. "Who was that?" "Someone from work. I have a meeting Monday morning." "Is it a good meeting or a bad meeting?" "I don't know yet. Probably good." Probably good is better than definitely bad," Maya said with the wisdom of 9 years. "Want to help me plan my science project? I'm making a list of supplies we need." "Absolutely." They spent the rest of the afternoon on the living room floor, surrounded by library books and Maya's increasingly elaborate sketches of tectonic plate movements. Ethan helped her research, offered suggestions, and tried not to think about Monday morning. But as evening settled in and he tucked Maya into bed, as he stood in her doorway watching her read one of her new books by nightlight, he couldn't help but wonder what Claire wanted to say. Thank you, probably. Some formal acknowledgement of what had happened, maybe an assurance that his position at the company wasn't compromised. She'd want to draw clear lines, reestablish professional boundaries, make sure they both understood that last night was an exception, not a precedent. He understood. He even agreed. But some small part of him, the part that had seen her vulnerable and afraid and achingly human, wondered if maybe there was something else. Some recognition that what they'd shared went beyond employer and employee, beyond crisis and response, into territory neither of them quite knew how to name. Sunday passed in the usual rhythm of single-parent life. Grocery shopping with Maya, laundry that never seemed to end, homework help, and a movie night featuring an animated film about robots that made his daughter cry and laugh in equal measure. Normal, ordinary, perfect. Monday morning came too quickly. Ethan dropped Maya at school, watching her race toward the building with her backpack bouncing and her French braid only slightly less lopsided than Friday. Then he drove to Morrison Industries headquarters, a glass and steel building that looked like every other successful company in the city. He'd been here before, but only to the maintenance offices in the basement and the operational floors where actual work happened. Executive offices were on the 15th floor, a place he'd never had reason to visit. The elevator was empty at 7:55. Ethan rode up alone, watching floor numbers tick by, trying to organize his thoughts. Be professional, be courteous. Don't assume anything. Let her set the tone. The 15th floor opened into a reception area that managed to be both impressive and surprisingly warm. Artwork that looked original but approachable. Furniture that invited you to sit. Windows that flooded everything with natural light. Janet Reeves sat at a desk that probably cost more than his truck, but she smiled when she saw him like he was expected and welcome. "Mr. Parker, right on time. Can I get you coffee?" "Black, please." "Perfect. Miss Rowe is ready for you. Straight back, corner office." Ethan accepted the coffee, real china, not paper cup, and walked down a hallway lined with photos of Morrison Industries through the decades. Workers on factory floors. Ribbon cuttings. Claire's father shaking hands with employees. Claire herself, younger, standing beside her father with pride in her eyes. The corner office door was open. Claire sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of walnut, reviewing something on her computer. She looked different than she had Friday night, polished, powerful, every inch the CEO. But when she looked up and saw him, her expression softened into something real. "Ethan, come in. Close the door, please." He did, settling into one of the chairs across from her desk. The office was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, bookshelves filled with what looked like actual books instead of decorative spines, photos of her father and what must be her mother on a credenza. "Thank you for coming," Claire said. "I know this probably feels strange." "A little," he admitted, "but I'm here." "You are." She stood, moving to the chairs beside him instead of staying behind the desk. Equal ground. "First, I want to apologize for Friday night, for putting you in that position, for—" "Don't!" Ethan held up a hand. "Don't apologize for having a medical emergency. Don't apologize for asking for help. And definitely don't apologize for being human." She stopped, studied him. "Most people would let me apologize. It would make them feel better about the power dynamic. I'm not most people." "No, you're not," she smiled. "Which brings me to why I asked you here. The board meeting Friday. I won. Unanimously. They voted to affirm my leadership and reject the proposed restructuring that would have gutted this company." "I heard. Congratulations." "I won because I walked in there completely certain of who I am and what I'm fighting for. And I was certain because you reminded me." She leaned forward. "Thursday night, in my kitchen, you asked me if this job was worth what it costs. And making me answer that question, making me articulate why it matters, that gave me clarity I hadn't had in months. I'm glad I could help." "You did more than help." Claire's voice was intense now. "Ethan, I've been CEO for 3 years. In that time, I've had hundreds of employees tell me what they think I want to hear. I've had executives manage me, board members manipulate me, and competitors underestimate me. But you saw past all of that. You saw a person having a medical emergency and you helped. No politics, no calculation, just human decency. Anyone would have done the same." "They wouldn't. They didn't. I was alone in that bar for 20 minutes, and you were the only person who noticed something was wrong." She paused. "And then you stayed. You monitored me all night. You got up every hour to make sure I was breathing, that I was safe. You did all of that expecting nothing in return. Because there was nothing to expect. You needed help. I was there. End of story. But it's not end of story. Claire stood, pacing to the window. Because now I owe you something I can never repay. You saved my life. You protected my privacy. You helped me win this biggest fight of my career. And I don't know what to do with that. Ethan set down his coffee cup. You don't have to do anything with it. We're good. But we're not, though. She turned back to face him. Because I can't just go back to seeing you as maintenance supervisor number 47. I can't unsee the person you are. The father who texts his daughter goodnight, the man who carries emergency numbers in his wallet, the human being who treats strangers with more dignity than most people show their friends. So what are you saying? I'm saying I want to offer you a position. Head of Safety and Operations. You'd oversee all facilities, all safety protocols, all emergency preparedness across every Morrison Industries location. You'd report directly to me, and you'd have the authority to implement the kinds of changes you outlined in that proposal about Building 3. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. That's a massive promotion. It is. And I want to be absolutely clear, this is not payment for Thursday night. This is not hush money or guilt or anything other than recognition that you have skills this company needs. I've been looking for someone to fill this role for 6 months. I've interviewed a dozen candidates with perfect resumes and MBA credentials, and none of them had what you have. Which is? The ability to see people. To understand that safety isn't about compliance checklists. It's about creating environments where people can do their jobs without fear, where fathers can go home to their daughters at the end of the day, where emergencies are prepared for, not just responded to. She moved closer. You wrote in that proposal that the greatest safety risk in any workplace is when people are afraid to report problems, that fear costs lives. Those were your exact words. I remember. So do I. Because it's true. And it's something no one with an MBA has ever said to me. Claire sat down again, meeting his eyes. I need someone who understands that, who can build systems that actually protect people instead of just protecting the company from liability. And I think that person is you. Ethan was quiet, processing. The money would be life-changing. He knew that without asking. The opportunity, the scope, the chance to actually make a difference instead of just fixing broken pipes and faulty wiring. It was everything he hadn't known he wanted. When would I start? He asked. 2 weeks. That gives you time to transition your current responsibilities and for me to announce the appointment properly. There will be people who question it, why I'm promoting someone without traditional credentials, why I'm creating a position that reports directly to the CEO. I'll handle that. All you need to do is say yes. What about Thursday night? If people find out, they won't. And even if they did, the timeline makes it clear this was already in motion. I've been looking for months. You submitted that proposal in September. The narrative is simple and true. I've been looking for the right person, and I found them. She paused. But Ethan, I need you to understand something. I'm offering you this because you're qualified, because I need what you can do, because this company will be better with you in this role. Not because of Thursday night. I believe you. Good. She smiled. So what do you say? Ethan thought about Maya, about the science project and the library books, and the future he was trying to build for her. He thought about 4,632 people who deserved to work in places that valued their safety over profit margins. He thought about Claire, standing in her kitchen at dawn, talking about promises and purpose. Yes, he said. I'll do it. The relief on her face was immediate and genuine. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. I think I do. He stood. And Claire, thank you for seeing something in me I wasn't sure was there. It was always there. You just needed someone to notice. She stood too, extending her hand. Welcome to the executive team, Ethan. I think we're going to do great things together. He shook her hand, and for just a moment, they weren't CEO and employee. They were two people who'd shared something profound, who'd seen each other at their most vulnerable, who'd chosen trust over fear. Then the moment passed, and Claire was all business again, walking him through next steps and timelines and people he'd need to meet. But as Ethan left her office, headed back down to the basement to finish out his last 2 weeks, He carried with him the memory of her smile, genuine, warm, grateful. And he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, Thursday night had changed both their lives in ways neither of them fully understood yet. The basement maintenance office felt different now, like Ethan was looking at it through glass. Same concrete walls, same fluorescent lights humming overhead, same coffee maker that had been brewing burnt offerings since before he started working here. But he wasn't the same person who'd walked out of here Thursday afternoon worried about nothing more complicated than a blown radiator hose. "Parker, you're back." Tom Rodriguez, his supervisor for the past 5 years, looked up from a work order. "Heard your truck died. Everything sorted?" "Yeah, all fixed." Ethan grabbed his clipboard from the wall hook. "What's on the schedule today?" "HVAC check in Building 2, couple of fluorescent fixtures out in the east wing, and someone reported a leak in the women's restroom on 3. Tom studied him. "You look different. Something happened over the weekend?" "Just a busy couple of days." Ethan scanned the work orders, mind already cataloging priorities. 2 more weeks of this. 2 more weeks of fixing immediate problems instead of solving systemic ones. 2 more weeks before everything changed. "Well, whatever it was agreed with you. You've got that look Maya gets when she figures out a hard math problem." Tom smiled. "Confident, ready to take on the world." "Maybe I am." Ethan grabbed his tool bag. "I'll start with the HVAC. That building's been running hot all winter." He spent the morning doing familiar work with unfamiliar clarity. The HVAC issue wasn't just a thermostat problem. It was a design flaw in how the zones were configured, forcing some areas to overheat while others froze. He fixed the immediate issue, but made detailed notes about the larger pattern. This was exactly the kind of thing his new position could address. Not just band-aids, but actual solutions. The fluorescent fixtures were straightforward, but while he was replacing them, he noticed the emergency lighting system was outdated. Another note. The leak in the women's restroom turned out to be a slow drip from a supply line that would eventually fail completely. He fixed it, then checked every restroom in the building, found 3 more with the same issue, documented everything. By lunch, he had a list of 17 items that weren't emergencies yet, but would be eventually. Preventable problems that no one was looking at because everyone was too busy reacting to crises. His phone buzzed. Text from Claire. "How's your first day as a lame duck maintenance supervisor?" He smiled despite himself. "Productive. Found 17 things you're paying me to fix in 2 weeks." Her response came quickly. "Save the list. That's exactly the kind of thinking I need in this role." Ethan pocketed his phone and headed to the break room. The lunch crowd was already there. Maintenance techs, custodial staff, a couple of drivers from the shipping department, people he'd worked alongside for years, people who knew him as reliable, quiet, good at his job, but not particularly ambitious. "Hey, Parker." Marcus Chen waved him over. "Saved you a seat. Brought extra of Lucy's cookies if you want one." "Thanks." Ethan sat down, accepting a chocolate chip cookie that was probably better than anything he'd ever baked. "How was your weekend?" "Chaotic. My oldest decided to try out for basketball, which means I'm now a basketball dad. I don't even like basketball." Marcus laughed. "But you do what you do, right?" "Right." Ethan thought about Maya's science project, about tectonic plates and partnerships and the way parenting meant constantly adapting to whatever your kid threw at you next. "What about you?" asked Jennifer Wu, one of the custodial supervisors. "Tom said your truck broke down. That get expensive?" "Not too bad. Back on the road Saturday morning." Ethan took a bite of cookie, wondering how much to say. These people would find out about his promotion eventually. Better it came from him than through the rumor mill. But not yet. Not until Claire made the official announcement. He'd learned enough about corporate politics to know that timing mattered, that premature information could complicate things unnecessarily. "Anyone else notice the temp swings in Building 2E?" he asked instead, redirecting. "I fixed the immediate issue, but there's a larger pattern." That launched a 20-minute discussion about HVAC problems, design flaws, and the way buildings developed personalities over time. Ethan listened more than he talked, filing away observations and complaints that would inform his work in the new role. These were the people who knew where the real problems were. Not the executives reviewing reports, but the workers who dealt with consequences every day. His phone buzzed again during the conversation. Not Claire this time. Janet Reeves, her assistant. Mr. Parker, Mrs. Rowe has asked me to schedule time with you Wednesday afternoon to discuss transition planning. Would 2 p.m. work? He texted back quickly. Yes, that works. Perfect. I'll send a calendar invite. Marcus noticed him checking his phone. Everything okay? You seem distracted today. Just some administrative stuff, nothing urgent. Ethan finished his cookie. I should get back to it. Still have half a building to check. The afternoon was more of the same. Routine maintenance work that he performed with half his attention, while the other half thought about systems and solutions. He found himself looking at familiar problems with new eyes, seeing not just what was broken, but why it had broken. What pattern of neglect or poor design had led to this moment? At 3:30, his radio crackled. Parker, you there? He keyed the mic. Yeah, Tom, what's up? Got a situation in the executive dining room. Water line burst. They need someone up there now. Ethan's stomach tightened. Executive dining room, 15th floor, Claire's floor. On my way. The elevator ride up felt longer than it had that morning. He tried not to think about whether Claire would be there, whether seeing her in a work context so soon after their meeting would be awkward. He was just a maintenance tech responding to a call. This was his job, nothing complicated about it. The dining room was in controlled chaos when he arrived. Water spreading across expensive tile, 2 servers trying to contain it with inadequate towels, and James Chen, Claire's CFO, standing in the doorway looking deeply annoyed. Finally, Chen spotted Ethan. The water main valve is behind that wall panel. Can you shut it off before this floods the entire floor? Yes, sir. Ethan was already moving, tool bag in hand. He found the access panel, popped it open, and shut off the valve. The rushing water sound stopped immediately. Valve's off. I need to assess the damage to the line before I can give you a timeline on repairs. How long will this room be out of commission? Ethan examined the burst pipe, the way water had damaged the wall, the extent of the flooding. Depends on what I find, but probably 24 hours minimum. The pipe needs replacing, the wall needs to dry out, and I want to check the whole system to make sure this wasn't a symptom of a larger problem. Chen sighed. The board lunch tomorrow is supposed to be here. Then you'll need to move it. This room isn't safe until I've verified the structural integrity and made sure there's no electrical hazard from the water damage. Ms. Rowe isn't going to like this. Ms. Rowe will like it less if someone gets hurt, because we rushed the repair. Ethan met the CFO's eyes steadily. Safety first, convenience second. That's the standard. Chen studied him for a long moment, and Ethan could see the man reassessing, connecting dots. You're the one who wrote that facility's safety proposal. Yes, sir. The one Ms. Rowe keeps citing in meetings. Chen's expression shifted from annoyed to interested. She's right. You do think differently than most maintenance staff. I just think about consequences. Ethan turned back to the pipe. This burst happened because the building's 40 years old and no one's done a systematic pressure check on the water system in at least a decade. You fix individual failures, but you never address the pattern. Eventually, the pattern catches up with you. And if you were in charge, what would you do differently? Schedule comprehensive infrastructure reviews, build maintenance timelines based on actual wear patterns, not arbitrary schedules. Train staff to recognize warning signs before failures happen. Ethan pulled out his phone, took photos of the damage. Spend a little more up front to save a lot on the back end. That's almost exactly what Ms. Rowe said about the safety proposal. Chen pulled out his own phone. I'm going to tell her the dining room's offline, but that you've got it handled, and I'm going to recommend she move the board lunch to the conference room. Appreciate it. Chen left, and Ethan was alone with the water damage and his thoughts. He spent the next 2 hours methodically checking every pipe connection in the wall, documenting weak points, building a comprehensive picture of the system's overall health. It was worse than he'd expected, multiple points showing signs of stress, pressure inconsistencies that suggested larger issues with the building's water infrastructure. His radio crackled again. Parker, this is Tom. How bad is it up there? Bad enough that I want to do a full building water system audit. This isn't an isolated failure, it's a symptom. Silence on the other end, then Tom's voice, careful. That's beyond our scope, Ethan. That's the kind of thing you'd need executive approval and budget for. I know. Ethan stared at the damaged pipe. But in 2 weeks, that's going to be my job. Might as well start building the case now. Another pause. What are you talking about? Ethan realized his mistake. He'd assumed Claire had already started the internal notification process, but apparently not. Nothing. Forget I said anything. I'll have a repair estimate for you by end of day. Ethan. Tom's voice was serious now. What's going on? I can't talk about it yet, but you'll find out soon. I promise. He finished the radio call and went back to work, hyper-aware now that he'd almost revealed information prematurely. He needed to be more careful. 2 weeks was a long time to keep a secret in an environment where information spread like water through damaged pipes. By 6 p.m., he had the immediate repair planned and a preliminary report on the larger infrastructure issues. He headed back to the basement to file paperwork, hoping to avoid any more awkward conversations. Tom was waiting in the office. Before you say anything, Ethan started, I really can't. Janet Reeves called me an hour ago. Tom cut him off. She wanted to discuss transitioning your current responsibilities because apparently you're being promoted to a position that reports directly to the CEO. He leaned back in his chair. Want to tell me what the hell is going on? Ethan set down his tool bag. The announcement isn't until next week. I gathered that. But Janet figured I should get a heads up since I'll need to hire your replacement. Tom studied him. Head of Safety and Operations, that's a big jump, Parker. I know. You deserve it. That safety proposal was brilliant, and you've been wasted down here fixing broken toilets when you should have been designing systems. Tom smiled, but there was sadness in it too. But I'm going to miss working with you. You're the best tech I've ever supervised. Thank you. That means a lot. Ethan sat down across from his supervisor. And I'm going to need your help. You know this building better than anyone. When I start auditing infrastructure and building safety programs, I'm going to need ground truth. The perspective of people who actually work with these systems every day. You'll have it. Whatever you need. Tom hesitated. Can I ask how this happened? 2 weeks ago, you were a maintenance supervisor. Now you're about to be a C-suite executive. That doesn't just happen. Ethan thought about Thursday night, about Claire shaking in a hotel bar, about choices made and trust given. Ms. Rowe read my safety proposal. She's been looking for someone to fill this role for months. She thought I'd be a good fit. It was true, if not complete. Tom seemed to accept it. Well, congratulations. And good luck. You're going to need it. Executive politics make basement maintenance look simple. Tom stood, offered his hand. But if anyone can navigate it while staying true to their principles, it's you. They shook hands, and Ethan felt the weight of transition settling on his shoulders. This was real now. In 2 weeks, he wouldn't be coming to this office anymore. Wouldn't be fixing pipes and replacing light fixtures. Wouldn't be just another maintenance guy trying to keep buildings running. He'd be responsible for safety across the entire company. 4,632 people depending on him to get it right. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like purpose crystallizing into something solid and real. He picked up Maya from after-school care at 6:30, listened to her excited recap of the day. Apparently the science project had been approved, and Mrs. Rodriguez loved their idea about tectonic plates, and took her home for dinner. Dad, you're smiling a lot, Maya observed over spaghetti. Did something good happen at work? Yeah, actually. Something really good. Ethan twirled pasta around his fork. But I can't talk about it yet. It's not official. Is it a secret? Kind of, but you'll know soon. Is it a good secret or a bad secret? Definitely good. Maya considered this. Good secrets are okay. Bad secrets are the ones that make you feel icky inside. Mrs. Rodriguez taught us that in health class. Mrs. Rodriguez is a very smart teacher, Ethan smiled. How's the science project planning going? That launched Maya into a detailed explanation of their latest ideas, complete with hand gestures that nearly knocked over her water glass. Ethan listened, asked questions, and felt gratitude for this. For normal evenings with his daughter, for spaghetti and science projects, and the simple joy of being fully present. His phone buzzed during cleanup. Claire again. Heard about the dining room. Thank you for handling it and for being honest with James about the larger infrastructure issues. Just doing my job, he texted back. You're doing more than that. You're already thinking like the head of safety and operations, which is exactly why I hired you. Ethan smiled at his phone, then pocketed it and went back to helping Maya with her homework. Wednesday's transition planning meeting was more intimidating than Ethan expected. He thought it would be just him and Claire, but when he arrived at her office at 2 p.m., he found a conference table full of people. James Chen, the CFO he'd met on Monday, Margaret Torres, head of HR, David Kim, general counsel, and two other executives whose titles he didn't catch. Ethan, come in. Claire gestured to the empty seat beside her. Everyone, this is Ethan Parker. As I mentioned in my email, Ethan will be joining us as head of safety and operations starting 2 weeks from Monday. The room offered polite nods and handshakes. Ethan sat down, acutely aware that his button-down shirt was from Target, and everyone else was wearing suits that cost more than his monthly rent. Claire seemed to sense his discomfort. Before we dive into transition planning, I want to address what I'm sure you're all thinking. Ethan doesn't have an MBA or traditional executive credentials. What he has is 15 years of hands-on experience with our facilities, a deep understanding of how our operations actually work, and the ability to see systemic problems that everyone else misses. She pulled up a document on the conference room screen. This is the safety proposal Ethan submitted 6 months ago. I've asked you all to read it, but I want to highlight a few key insights. For the next 10 minutes, Claire walked through Ethan's proposal, pointing out observations about workplace culture, safety reporting barriers, and infrastructure vulnerabilities. Ethan listened to his own words presented back to him and barely recognized them. He'd written the proposal on his lunch breaks, never imagining it would end up being presented to executives like this. The question I asked myself, Claire continued, was whether I wanted someone who could talk about safety management in theoretical terms, or someone who actually understood how to keep people safe. Ethan is the latter. James Chen spoke up. I'm not questioning the hire. I trust your judgment, but I do want to understand scope. What exactly will this role oversee? Claire looked at Ethan. Why don't you answer that? Every eye turned to him. Ethan took a breath, thought about what mattered, and spoke from certainty rather than fear. Safety and operations covers everything that keeps our people safe and our facilities functional. That includes physical infrastructure, emergency preparedness, safety training, incident response, and compliance. But more than that, it's about building a culture where people feel empowered to identify and report risks before they become emergencies. That's a broad mandate, Margaret Torres said. How do you plan to prioritize? Start with assessment. I can't fix what I don't understand. So the first 90 days will be spent doing comprehensive audits of all our facilities, talking to workers at every level, and identifying patterns of risk that we're not currently addressing. Ethan thought about the burst pipe, about the HVAC issues, about all the small failures that added up to larger vulnerabilities. Then we prioritize based on actual risk, not just what's most visible or politically sensitive. David Kim, the lawyer, leaned forward. What about regulatory compliance? That's typically a significant part of safety management. Compliance is the floor, not the ceiling. We meet regulatory requirements because we have to, but that's not the goal. The goal is creating workplaces where people can do their jobs without fear of injury or harm. Sometimes that means going beyond compliance. That could get expensive, Chen said. So does liability when someone gets hurt because we cut corners. Ethan met the CFO's eyes. I'm not interested in spending money unnecessarily, but I'm also not interested in making decisions based purely on short-term cost savings when long-term consequences could be catastrophic. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Claire smiled. This is exactly the perspective I was talking about. Ethan thinks about people first, systems second, and politics not at all, which is exactly what this role needs. The meeting continued for another hour, covering reporting structures, budget allocation, staffing needs, and timeline expectations. Ethan answered questions, took notes, and tried to absorb the reality that this was his life now. These were his colleagues. This was his responsibility. As the meeting wrapped up, Margaret Torres caught him at the door. Can I give you some advice? Please. You're going to face skepticism. People who think you're unqualified. who resent that you were promoted over them, who assume you got this job through connections rather than merit. She smiled. Don't let it shake you. You know things they don't, and that's valuable. Just stay true to what you know and trust your instincts. Thank you, I appreciate that. Also, Claire doesn't make mistakes about people. If she says you're right for this role, you are. Trust that too. Ethan nodded, grateful for the kindness, and headed back downstairs to finish out his week. The basement felt even smaller now, like he'd already outgrown it. But he had work to do, responsibilities to fulfill, and 2 more weeks of proving that he could finish what he started. Thursday brought the formal announcement. Claire sent a company-wide email introducing Ethan as the new head of safety and operations, outlining his background and vision for the role. Within an hour, Ethan's phone was flooded with messages, congratulations from colleagues, questions from people he barely knew, and a few that were clearly fishing for information about how he'd managed such a dramatic promotion. He ignored most of them, focusing instead on his work. But during lunch, Marcus cornered him in the break room. Head of safety and operations? Parker, that's incredible. Marcus pulled him into a hug. Why didn't you say anything? Couldn't until it was official. Ethan accepted the hug, grateful for genuine happiness rather than suspicion. It's still kind of surreal. You earned it, man. That safety proposal was brilliant. I remember when you were writing it during breaks, asking everyone for input. Marcus grinned. And now you're going to be our boss's boss's boss. I'm going to be someone who actually listens when you tell me about problems. That's the goal. Jennifer Wu joined them, carrying her lunch. Congratulations, Ethan. Though I have to ask, how did this happen so fast? Usually these executive positions take months to fill. It was the question Ethan had been dreading. How much to say? How much was safe to reveal? Ms. Rowe read my safety proposal and asked to meet with me. We talked about my vision for improving safety and operations across the company, and she offered me the position. All true, just not complete. That simple. Jennifer looked skeptical. That simple. Ethan met her eyes steadily. I know it seems fast, but sometimes when the right person and the right opportunity align, you don't wait. I guess. Jennifer smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Well, I hope you remember where you came from. A lot of executives forget what it's like to actually do the work. I won't forget, I promise. The conversation moved on, but Ethan felt the undercurrent of suspicion. People wanted to believe in meritocracy, in hard work being rewarded. But they also knew that executive promotions rarely happened without politics, without connections, without something happening behind closed doors. He couldn't tell them about Thursday night, about saving Claire's life, about the trust that had formed in crisis. And because he couldn't tell them, they'd create their own narratives. Some would assume he'd networked his way up. Others would think he'd somehow manipulated the situation. A few would believe he'd actually earned it. All he could do was prove himself through his work. Friday afternoon, his last day before the transition weekend, Ethan was finishing up paperwork when his radio crackled. Parker, you're needed in conference room A, executive floor. He frowned. What's the issue? Don't know. Ms. Rowe requested you specifically. Ethan's pulse quickened. Claire wouldn't pull him out of work unless it was important. He grabbed his tool bag and headed upstairs, mind racing through possibilities. Conference room A was empty when he arrived except for Claire, standing at the window looking out at the city. She turned when she heard him enter. There's no emergency, she said immediately. I'm sorry for the dramatic summons, but I wanted to talk to you privately, and my office has glass walls. Okay. Ethan set down his tool bag. What's going on? I've been getting feedback about your promotion, some of it positive, some of it concerned, some of it openly hostile. She crossed her arms. There are people who think I made a mistake, who think you're unqualified, who are actively hoping you'll fail so they can say I told you so. I figured as much. It doesn't bother you? Of course it bothers me, but it doesn't change anything. I still have a job to do, and I'm still going to do it to the best of my ability. Ethan met her eyes. Unless you're having second thoughts. Not even slightly, but I wanted you to know what you're walking into. Executive politics can be brutal, and you're going to be scrutinized in ways you've never experienced before. She moved closer. Every decision you make will be questioned. Every mistake will be magnified. People will be looking for reasons to prove I was wrong about you. So what do you need from me? Be yourself. The person who saw a stranger in distress and helped without hesitation. The person who thinks about consequences and people and doing things right instead of doing things fast. Claire's voice was intense. Don't try to become what you think an executive should be. That's what everyone else does, and it's why most executives lose touch with reality. I can do that. I know you can. That's why I hired you. She pulled an envelope from her pocket. This is your formal offer letter. Salary, benefits, equity package, all the details we discussed. HR wanted to handle it, but I wanted to give it to you myself. Ethan opened the envelope, scanned the numbers, and felt his heart stop. The salary was more than double what he currently made. The benefits included things he'd never even thought to hope for, and the equity package meant he'd actually own a piece of Morrison Industries. This is too much, he said quietly. It's market rate for the position. Actually, it's slightly below market rate because I want you focused on the work, not on negotiating compensation. Claire smiled. You're worth this, Ethan. More than this. And I need you to believe that because everyone else is going to try to convince you otherwise. I don't know what to say. Say you'll start Monday after next ready to change how this company thinks about safety and operations. Say you'll trust yourself even when other people don't. Say you'll remember that night in my kitchen when I asked you if this job was worth what it costs, and you helped me remember why the answer is yes. Ethan looked at her, this woman who'd been terrified and vulnerable and human, who'd fought for her company and won, who was now trusting him with responsibility he'd never imagined having. I'll do all of that, he said. I promise. Good. Claire extended her hand. Welcome to the executive team, Ethan. Officially? They shook hands, and Ethan felt something shift inside him, the last piece of doubt falling away, replaced by certainty and purpose. He spent his final weekend as a maintenance supervisor organizing files, documenting procedures, and preparing notes for whoever would replace him. Maya helped, organizing papers and asking questions about his new job. So you're going to make sure everyone is safe at work? She asked, stacking folders neatly. That's right. Like how you made sure that person was safe last Thursday. Ethan looked at his daughter, this brilliant, perceptive child who saw more than most adults. Exactly like that. Then you're going to be really good at it. Maya smiled, because you're good at taking care of people. You take care of me, and you're going to take care of all those workers. I'm going to try. You'll do more than try. You always do. Monday morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. Ethan dropped Maya at school, watched her race toward the building with her backpack bouncing, and drove to Morrison Industries for his first day as head of safety and operations. The parking spot had his name on it now. Executive parking, close to the entrance, with a view of the building he'd helped maintain for 5 years. He sat in his truck for a moment, breathing, centering himself. Then he grabbed his briefcase, new, a gift from Maya who'd saved her allowance for weeks, and walked into the building ready to prove that sometimes the most qualified person for a job is the one who remembers what it's like to need help and chooses to give it anyway. The 15th floor felt different when you belonged there. Ethan walked past Janet Reeves's desk. She smiled and gestured toward his new office, and into a space that was somehow both too large and exactly right. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the manufacturing district where Morrison Industries had started 40 years ago. A desk that looked like it had been built by someone who understood that furniture should last. Bookshelves waiting to be filled with something other than decorative spines. And sitting on the desk, a framed photo. Maya, from last year's school picture, grinning with missing front teeth and absolute confidence. He hadn't put it there, which meant Claire had. Thought you might want a reminder of what matters. Her voice came from the doorway. She was dressed for battle today, charcoal suit, hair pulled back, the armor of leadership firmly in place, but her smile was genuine. How does it feel? Surreal. Ethan set down his briefcase, touched the photo frame lightly. Like I'm going to wake up and find out I'm still in the basement fixing leaky pipes. You spent 5 years earning this. It's not a dream. She stepped into the office, handed him a tablet. Your schedule for the week. I've blocked the first 3 days for facility tours and staff meetings. You need to meet people, see operations firsthand, start building relationships. Ethan scanned the schedule. Manufacturing floor tour at 9, safety team meeting at 11, lunch with facilities managers, afternoon sessions with HR about training programs. It went on like that for pages. Back-to-back meetings, site visits, introductions. This is ambitious, he said. It's necessary. You're walking into a role that's been empty for 6 months. People have questions, concerns, and expectations. Some of them think you're going to revolutionize everything overnight. Others think you're going to fail spectacularly. Claire met his eyes. You need to show them who you are before they decide who you are. Any advice on how to do that? Be honest. Be present. Listen more than you talk. She paused. And remember that these people have been doing their jobs for years without someone in this role. Some of them are doing it well. Some of them are barely holding things together. Your job isn't to come in and tell them everything they're doing wrong. It's to understand what they're doing and help them do it better. Sounds like something your father would have said. Claire's expression softened. It is. He used to tell me that leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about asking the right questions and trusting people to solve their own problems. Smart man. He was. She glanced at her watch. Your tour starts in 20 minutes. Kenneth Morrison, our plant manager, will meet you at the manufacturing entrance. He's been here since my father founded the company, and he knows more about how things actually work than anyone else. Listen to him. I will. Thank you, Claire. She turned to leave, then stopped. Ethan, there's something else you should know. Not everyone is happy about your promotion. You're going to encounter resistance, some of it subtle, some of it overt. Don't let it shake you. You earned this position, and you have my full support. Who specifically should I be worried about? Robert Daniels, VP of Operations. He applied for this role before I created it, thought he should oversee safety as part of his existing portfolio. He's professional enough not to undermine you directly, but he's not going to make things easy either. She straightened her jacket. And there are a few board members who still think I should have hired someone with traditional credentials. They'll be watching for any excuse to question my judgment. No pressure then. You'll be fine. Just be yourself. She smiled. That's what got you here. After she left, Ethan stood in his new office trying to absorb the reality. This was his space now. His responsibility. His chance to prove that instinct and integrity mattered as much as credentials and pedigree. He had 19 minutes before the tour started. He spent them reviewing the manufacturing facility's safety records for the past year, incident reports, near-miss documentation, safety training completion rates. The patterns were clear immediately. Most incidents clustered in certain areas during certain shifts involving certain types of tasks. No one had connected the dots because everyone was too busy reacting to individual events. But Ethan saw the pattern, and patterns meant systemic problems that could be solved. He grabbed a notebook, old habits from years of facility maintenance, and headed downstairs. Kenneth Morrison was exactly what Ethan expected. 60-something, weathered hands that had done real work, eyes that missed nothing. He extended his hand with the firm grip of someone who measured people by their handshake. Mr. Parker, heard a lot about you. Ethan, please, and I've heard about you too. Claire said you're the person who really knows how this place works. Kenneth's expression shifted slightly, surprise replacing wariness. She said that? She did. Said you've been here since her father started the company, and that if I wanted to understand Morrison Industries, I should listen to you. Well, Kenneth cleared his throat. That's good to know. Most executives who come through here want to tell me how to run my plant, not listen to how it actually runs. I'm not most executives. I spent the last 5 years in maintenance. I know the difference between what reports say and what actually happens. Kenneth studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right then, let me show you what we've built here. The tour took 3 hours. Kenneth walked Ethan through every stage of production, introduced him to workers who'd been there for decades and new hires learning the ropes, pointed out modifications they'd made to improve efficiency and safety. Ethan took notes constantly, asked questions that made Kenneth pause and think, and paid attention to things that weren't being said, like the fact that the overnight shift had twice as many incidents as day shift, but no one had investigated why. Or that the safety equipment in Building 3 was outdated compared to Building 1, creating inconsistency in protection. Or that new employees got safety training on their first day, then nothing for a year, leaving them to figure things out through trial and error. "You're seeing things other people miss," Kenneth said as they stood on the production floor watching a team assemble components with practiced efficiency. Most executives tour the plant, nod politely, ask superficial questions, and leave. You're actually paying attention. Because this matters. These people's safety, their ability to do their jobs without fear of injury, that's what my role is about. Ethan watched a worker adjust a safety guard that looked loose. "Can I talk to that employee? The one who just fixed the guard on the press?" "Sure. That's Maria Santos. Been here 8 years. Kenneth waved her over. Maria approached cautiously, clearly uncertain why an executive wanted to speak with her. Ethan offered his hand. "Hi, Maria. I'm Ethan Parker. I just started as head of safety and operations. I noticed you adjusting that safety guard. How often does it come loose?" Maria glanced at Kenneth, then back at Ethan. "Every few days. I tighten it myself rather than wait for maintenance. Faster that way." "And you know how to tighten it safely? You were trained on that equipment?" "I've been running this press for 5 years. I know every sound it makes, every quirk it has." She hesitated. "Is there a problem?" "No, not at all. I'm just trying to understand how things actually work versus how the manuals say they work." Ethan pulled out his notebook. "If you could design the perfect safety system for this press, what would it include?" Maria blinked. "No one's ever asked me that. I'm asking now." She thought for a moment, then started talking. About guard designs that wouldn't require constant adjustment, about warning systems that actually warned instead of just making noise everyone ignored, about training that taught you why safety procedures mattered, not just what they were. Ethan wrote it all down, asked follow-up questions, and thanked her genuinely. After she returned to work, Kenneth shook his head. "In 30 years, I've never seen an executive ask a line worker to design safety systems." "Why not? She's the one using the equipment every day. She knows what works and what doesn't better than any engineer in a conference room." Ethan looked at his notes. "How many other workers have ideas like this that no one's ever asked for?" "All of them, probably." Kenneth smiled. "You're going to shake things up, aren't you?" "I'm going to try." Ethan checked his watch. "I have a safety team meeting in 20 minutes. Any advice?" "Be honest. They've been running things without leadership for 6 months and they're tired. Some of them think you're going to swoop in and change everything they've built. Others hope you will. Just tell them the truth about what you're here to do." The safety team meeting was held in a conference room that had clearly seen better days. Scuffed table, mismatched chairs, a whiteboard covered in notes from previous meetings that no one had erased. 5 people sat around the table, ranging from a young woman who looked fresh out of college to a gray-haired man who'd probably forgotten more about safety than most people learned. Ethan walked in, set down his notebook, and took a seat rather than standing at the head of the table. "Hi, everyone. I'm Ethan Parker. I know you've all been holding things together for the past 6 months without someone in this role. And I want to start by saying thank you. That takes dedication and skill." The tension in the room eased slightly. The gray-haired man spoke first. "I'm Richard Chen, Senior Safety Coordinator. I've been with Morrison Industries for 22 years. I applied for your position when it was posted." It was a challenge, delivered calmly but unmistakably. Ethan met it head-on. "Then you probably should have gotten it. You have experience I don't have, credentials I don't have, and institutional knowledge that I can't match," he paused. "But Ms. Rowe chose me anyway, which means she saw something she needed that wasn't on a resume. My job now is to prove she was right without pretending I know things I don't, which means I need your help." Richard studied him. "What kind of help?" "Honest assessment. What's working? What's broken? What have you been trying to fix but can't because you don't have authority or resources?" Ethan looked around the table. "I'm not here to tell you how to do your jobs. I'm here to remove obstacles so you can do them better." The young woman raised her hand tentatively. "I'm Jessica Wu, Safety Training Coordinator. I've been here 9 months. One of the biggest obstacles is that we don't have budget for updated training materials or programs. We're using videos from 2015 and manuals that reference equipment we don't even have anymore. What would you need to fix that? Honestly, about $50,000 for new materials, updated videos, and interactive training modules. But every time I've requested it, I'm told safety training isn't a priority compared to production needs. Ethan wrote that down. It's a priority now. Send me a detailed proposal by end of week and I'll get it in front of Ms. Rowe. Jessica's eyes widened. Just like that? Just like that? If training is outdated, people aren't learning what they need to stay safe. That's unacceptable. He looked around the table. What else? For the next 90 minutes, they talked. Really talked. Not the careful corporate speak Ethan had expected, but honest assessment of problems and possibilities. Richard admitted that incident reporting was probably underreported because workers feared being blamed. Jessica explained that new hire orientation was rushed because production managers pressured training to get people on the floor faster. A middle-aged man named David revealed that safety equipment budgets were constantly rated for other operational needs. Ethan took notes, asked questions, and felt his understanding of the systemic issues deepen. These weren't bad people doing bad work. These were dedicated professionals working within a broken system that prioritized short-term efficiency over long-term safety. Here's what I'm hearing, he said when the conversation finally wound down. We have good people, good intentions, and inadequate resources and authority to actually implement what we know needs to happen. Does that sound accurate? Everyone nodded. Then that's what we fix first. I'm going to meet with Ms. Rowe this week and make the case for properly funding this department, but I need you to help me build that case. I need data, specific examples, cost-benefit analysis showing what prevention costs versus what incidents cost. He met each person's eyes. Can you do that? We've been trying to do that for 6 months, Richard said quietly. But no one would listen. I'm listening, and more importantly, Ms. Rowe is listening. She created this position because she believes safety matters. Now we have to show her what that actually means in practice. The meeting ended with actual energy instead of exhausted resignation. As people filed out, Richard hung back. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone who'd come in trying to prove they deserved the promotion. Someone who'd make changes just to make changes, to show they were in charge. Richard shook his head. But you're actually trying to understand the work before changing it. I spent 5 years fixing things that broke because no one listened to the people who knew better. I'm not making that mistake again. Ethan stood. And Richard? I meant what I said. You probably should have gotten this job, but since I got it instead, I hope you'll help me not screw it up. Richard smiled, a real one, not the polite professional mask. I think I can do that. Lunch with the facilities managers was less encouraging. Robert Daniels, the VP of operations who'd wanted this role, sat at the head of the table like he owned it. He was everything Ethan wasn't. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of smooth confidence that came from MBA programs and corner offices. So, Robert said after introductions were complete, what's your 90-day plan? It was framed as a reasonable question, but Ethan heard the trap. Robert wanted him to commit to specifics that could be picked apart, to overpromise, to reveal inexperience. My 90-day plan is to learn, Ethan said simply. I'm spending the first month doing comprehensive facility audits, talking to workers at every level, and understanding the actual state of our safety and operations infrastructure. Month 2, I'll analyze patterns and develop recommendations. Month 3, we'll start implementing changes based on data rather than assumptions. That seems slow, one of the other managers said. We have urgent needs. Urgent needs that have existed for how long? 6 months? A year? Longer? Ethan met the manager's eyes. If these were true emergencies, they would have been escalated and handled already. What we have are chronic problems masquerading as urgent ones. And chronic problems require systematic solutions, not band-aids. Bold words from someone who was fixing toilets 2 weeks ago, Robert said. His tone was light, almost joking, but the dismissiveness was clear. The table went silent. Everyone looked at Ethan, waiting to see how he'd respond. You're right, Ethan said calmly. I was fixing toilets and HVAC systems and electrical issues and structural problems. I spent 5 years learning how this company actually works from the ground up. How many facility tours have you done in the past year, Robert? Robert's smile tightened. I review facility reports weekly. Reports aren't the same as reality. Reports tell you what people want you to know. Walking the floor tells you what's actually happening. Ethan leaned forward slightly. I spent this morning with Kenneth Morrison. He showed me that overnight shift has twice the incident rate of day shift. Did that show up in your reports? Incident rates fluctuate. For 6 months straight? With a clear pattern that suggests systemic issues with training, supervision, or fatigue management, Ethan pulled out his notebook. Because that's not fluctuation. That's a problem no one's addressing. The room shifted. Other managers were paying attention now, not to Robert's attempts to undermine, but to Ethan's observations. What's your theory? Asked a woman Ethan recognized as the Building 2 facilities manager. About the overnight shift? I don't have a theory yet. That's why I need to talk to overnight workers, their supervisors, and anyone else who might have insight. But my guess? Some combination of inadequate lighting, rushed training for overnight positions, and supervisor-to-worker ratio that's too low to provide proper oversight. He looked at her. Have you noticed issues in Building 2 specifically? Yes, actually. We've had 3 minor incidents in the past month, all on overnight, all involving newer employees. Same equipment that day shift uses? Same equipment, same procedures, different results? Then it's not the equipment or the procedures. It's something about the conditions or support during overnight hours. Ethan made a note. I'd like to come observe overnight shift in Building 2, see what's different. The facilities manager nodded, and Ethan saw Robert's jaw tighten. This wasn't going the way he'd planned. The rest of lunch was more productive. Managers sharing concerns about aging infrastructure, inadequate maintenance budgets, and the constant tension between production demands and safety requirements. Ethan listened, took notes, and resisted the urge to promise solutions he couldn't yet deliver. As people filed out, Robert stayed behind. You handled that well, he said. Better than I expected. I'm not here to play politics, Robert. I'm here to do a job. Everything is politics at this level. The sooner you learn that, the better. Robert stood, buttoned his suit jacket. But I'll give you credit. You're not as naive as I thought you'd be. And you're not as subtle as you think you are. Ethan met his eyes. If you want this role, if you think you could do it better, I respect that. But undermining me doesn't get you what you want. It just makes the company less safe. I'm not trying to undermine you. Then what would you call what happened in there? Robert was quiet for a moment. Testing, seeing if you'd fold under pressure or stand your ground. And? You stood your ground. That's worth knowing. He headed for the door, then paused. But you should know, not everyone is going to be as direct as I am. There are people in this company who smile to your face and sharpen knives behind your back. Watch yourself. After he left, Ethan sat alone in the conference room processing. This was the world he'd entered, where competence mattered but politics mattered more, where people tested you to see if you'd break, where allies and enemies wore the same professional masks. His phone buzzed. Claire, how did lunch go? He texted back. Interesting. Robert tested me. I think I passed. Her response was immediate. You did more than pass. I just got calls from 3 people at that lunch saying they were impressed. Keep doing what you're doing. Ethan pocketed his phone and headed back to his office. He had afternoon meetings with HR about training programs, and he wanted to review his notes from the morning first. Janet stopped him in the hallway. Your 2 o'clock is waiting in your office. I don't have a 2 o'clock scheduled. She insisted it was important. Sarah Chen said she's a physician and needs to speak with you privately. Ethan's stomach dropped. Dr. Chen, Claire's personal physician, the one who'd walked him through monitoring Claire after the allergic reaction. Why would she be here? He found her standing by his window, looking out at the city. She turned when he entered, and her expression was serious. Dr. Chen, is everything all right? Is Claire? Claire is fine. Physically, at least. She gestured to the chairs. May I? Of course. Ethan closed the door, sat down across from her. What's this about? I wanted to thank you for what you did 2 weeks ago. She leaned forward. Claire told me everything, the bar, the drive to her house, your decision to stay and monitor her condition. You saved her life. I did what anyone would have done. No, you did what most people wouldn't have done. You saw past her title and her power to the person underneath. That takes awareness most people don't have. Dr. Chen paused. But I'm also here to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay? Have you noticed anything concerning about Claire since that night? Changes in behavior, signs of stress, anything that suggests she's not managing the pressure of her position well? Ethan thought about Monday morning, about Claire in her kitchen talking about the loneliness of leadership, about how she'd looked terrified and small in that hotel bar, about the armor she wore every day to hide vulnerability. She's lonely, he said quietly. She's carrying the weight of this company, the responsibility for thousands of people, and she's doing it alone. No family support, no real friends she can trust, just executives and board members who all want something from her. I know. I've been concerned about that for a while now. Dr. Chen sighed. Claire is brilliant, capable, and completely isolated. She won't see a therapist because she thinks it makes her look weak. She won't delegate because she doesn't trust anyone else to care about this company the way she does. And she's burning out, slowly, but inevitably. What do you want me to do? Be her friend, not her employee, not someone who wants something from her, but someone who sees her as a person first and a CEO second. Dr. Chen met his eyes. You already did that once, in that hotel bar when you saw someone who needed help rather than someone who could fire you. She needs that. Someone who treats her like a human being. I'm not sure that's appropriate. The power dynamic. The power dynamic is exactly why she needs it. Everyone else in her life treats her like she's made of glass or steel. You treated her like she was just another person having a medical emergency. Dr. Chen stood. I'm not asking you to be inappropriate. I'm asking you to be human. Check in on her, ask how she's doing. Remind her that there's more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings. I can do that. Good. She handed him a business card. And if you ever notice anything that concerns you, if she seems more stressed than usual, if she mentions not sleeping, if anything feels off, call me. Don't wait. Claire is very good at hiding when things are wrong, and I need someone who actually pays attention. After Dr. Chen left, Ethan sat in his office staring at the business card. This was more complicated than he'd anticipated. He'd thought saving Claire's life was a one-time thing, a crisis managed and completed. But apparently, it had created an ongoing responsibility, not just to do his job well, but to look out for someone who had no one else looking out for her. His phone buzzed. Maya texting from after-school care. Dad, guess what? Mrs. Rodriguez said our science project idea is the best she's ever seen. Can we go to the craft store tonight to get supplies? He smiled, the normalcy of it grounding him. Of course, sweetie. I'll pick you up at 5:30 and we'll go straight there. The afternoon meetings went better than expected. HR was enthusiastic about updating training programs. Facilities, managers were cautiously optimistic about infrastructure improvements, and everyone seemed relieved that someone was actually listening to concerns that had been ignored for months. By 5 o'clock, Ethan was exhausted, the kind of tired that came from mental effort rather than physical labor. He'd spent the day performing, proving himself, navigating politics he was still learning to recognize. But he'd also started to build something. Relationships, trust, the foundation for actual change. He picked up Maya, took her to the craft store where she carefully selected supplies for the tectonic plate model, and listened to her excited chatter about school and science and the future. Normal, ordinary, perfect. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table reviewing notes from his first day. Patterns were already emerging: chronic underfunding, poor communication between shifts, safety equipment that was adequate by regulation but inadequate by common sense, problems that could be solved with resources and attention. His phone buzzed. Claire, thank you for today. Multiple people told me you asked better questions in one morning than most executives ask in a year. He texted back, just trying to understand what I'm working with. You're doing more than that. You're showing people that someone finally cares about getting it right, instead of just checking boxes. Ethan stared at the text, then made a decision. Can I ask you something personal? A pause, then, yes. Are you okay? And I don't mean professionally, I mean actually okay. The pause was longer this time. Then, I'm managing. Why do you ask? Because Dr. Chen came to see me today. She's worried about you. Another long pause. She shouldn't have done that. Maybe not. But she did. And now I'm asking, are you taking care of yourself or are you just surviving? The response took 5 minutes to arrive. I don't know how to answer that. Then let me ask it differently. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because it served a business purpose? No response. Ethan waited, giving her space to think. Finally, I can't remember. That's what I thought. You should fix that. I don't know how. Start small. Take a real lunch break tomorrow. Not a working lunch, not a meeting disguised as food. Actual time away from your desk. The response was almost immediate. Will you join me? Ethan hesitated. This was crossing a line, blurring the boundaries between professional and personal. But he thought about Dr. Chen's request, about Claire sitting alone in that hotel bar, about the cost of isolation. Yes, he typed. Where and when? Tomorrow, 12:30. There's a park 2 blocks from here with food trucks. Meet me there? I'll be there. He set down his phone and wondered what he'd just agreed to. A lunch between colleagues, a continuation of the strange intimacy that had formed in crisis, something else entirely? Whatever it was, he'd committed. And Ethan Parker didn't back out of commitments. The next morning started with overnight shift observation in Building 2. Ethan arrived at 11 p.m., introduced himself to the supervisor, a tired woman named Patricia who looked like she hadn't slept properly in weeks, and spent the next 8 hours watching how work happened when executives weren't around. The problems became obvious immediately. Lighting was dimmer than day shift, making detail work harder. The supervisor-to-worker ratio was half what it should be, meaning Patricia was constantly running between areas trying to provide oversight. And the workers themselves were a mix of experienced people pulling double shifts for overtime and newer employees who'd been rushed through training. Ethan talked to workers during breaks, asked about challenges, listened to frustrations that had been building for months. One man told him about nearly losing a finger because the safety guard had been removed for efficiency. A woman explained that she reported a hazard 3 times before anyone addressed it. Another worker admitted he didn't fully understand the emergency procedures but was too embarrassed to ask. By 7 a.m., when day shifts started arriving, Ethan had pages of notes and a clear understanding of why overnight had twice the incident rate. It wasn't bad workers or inadequate procedures. It was systematic underinvestment in the shift that leadership didn't see. He went home, showered, changed, and was back at the office by 9:30 for a meeting with the executive team. Claire had asked him to present preliminary findings from his first week, and he'd spent the early morning hours organizing observations into coherent themes. The executive conference room was intimidating. Mahogany table, leather chairs, walls lined with photos of Morrison Industries through the decades. James Chen was there, Robert Daniels, Margaret Torres, and 3 other executives whose domains touched on safety and operations. Claire sat at the head of the table, every inch the CEO. But when Ethan walked in, she met his eyes briefly, and he saw the person underneath, tired, determined, grateful he was there. "Good morning, everyone," Claire said. "Ethan's been in his role for 1 week. I've asked him to share initial observations, not formal recommendations, just what he's seen as he assesses our operations." Ethan stood, pulled up his presentation on the screen. "I've spent the past week touring facilities, meeting with staff, and observing operations across different shifts and locations. What I'm seeing is a company with good people working within inadequate systems." He clicked to the first slide, incident rate data. Our overall incident rate is within industry standards, but when you break it down by shift, location, and employee tenure, patterns emerge. Overnight shift has twice the incident rate of day shift. Building 3 has higher rates than buildings 1 and 2. Employees with less than 6 months tenure account for 60% of incidents. "We know all this," Robert said. "The question is what you're going to do about it. The question is why these patterns exist in the first place." Ethan clicked to the next slide. "I spent last night observing overnight shift in Building 2. The lighting is inadequate for detail work. The supervisor-to-worker ratio is half what it should be. Safety equipment is older and less well-maintained than day shift equipment, And training for overnight positions is rushed because we're trying to fill shifts quickly. He looked around the table. These aren't worker problems. These are system problems. We're setting overnight shift up to fail, then blaming them for failing. What's your recommendation? Claire asked. Invest in overnight shift the same way we invest in day shift. Better lighting, proper staffing ratios, equipment parity, and comprehensive training that doesn't get rushed because production needs bodies on the floor. Ethan clicked to his cost analysis. This will cost approximately $300,000 across all facilities, but our average incident costs us $50,000 in direct expenses and lost productivity. We had 12 incidents on overnight shift last quarter. That's $600,000 in costs. Prevention is cheaper than reaction. The room was quiet. Then James Chen leaned forward. You built this analysis in 1 week? I've been thinking about these patterns for 5 years. I just finally have the authority to do something about them. This is solid work, Chen said, looking at Claire. If these numbers are accurate, this pays for itself in 2 quarters. The numbers are accurate, Ethan said. I pulled them from incident reports, maintenance logs, and production data. But more importantly, I talked to the workers who are living with these conditions every day. They know what's broken. We just haven't been listening. Claire smiled. Approved. James, work with Ethan to allocate budget. I want implementation plans by end of month. Robert cleared his throat. This is one issue. What about the other patterns you mentioned? Building 3? New employee incidents? Building 3 needs infrastructure upgrades that I'm still scoping, but new employee incidents are simpler. Our training program is outdated and inadequate. Jessica Wu on my team has proposed a complete overhaul. $50,000 investment projected to reduce new employee incidents by 40%. Also approved, Claire said immediately. What else? Ethan spent the next hour walking through findings, recommendations, and cost-benefit analyses. The executive team asked tough questions, pushed back on assumptions, and challenged his numbers. But by the end, he had approval for 7 major initiatives and buy-in from people who'd been skeptical a week ago. As the meeting wrapped up, Claire caught his eye. Still on for 12:30? Wouldn't miss it. The park was exactly what Claire had described, a small green space wedged between office buildings, with food trucks lining one side and benches scattered under trees that were just starting to show spring leaves. Ethan arrived first, bought coffee from a truck, and found a bench with a view of the path. Claire appeared 10 minutes later, dressed down by her standards. Slacks and a sweater instead of a suit, hair loose instead of pulled back. She looked younger like this, less like a CEO and more like a person who might actually take a lunch break. You came, she said, sitting down beside him. I said I would. I know, but I half expected you to text an excuse. This is unusual. So was Thursday night. We're kind of past usual. Ethan handed her one of the coffees. Black, right? You remembered. She took a sip, closed her eyes briefly. This is nice. I can't remember the last time I just sat in a park. How long have you been CEO? 3 years. Before that, I was VP of Strategic Planning for 2 years, Director of Operations before that. I've been working at Morrison Industries in some capacity since I graduated college. She looked at the trees. My father used to bring me here when I was little, before everything got complicated. What changed? He got sick. The company started struggling. The board turned on him, tried to force him out. He fought them off, but it cost him. Stress, sleepless nights, constant battles. Her voice was quiet. He died thinking he'd saved the company, but really, he just delayed the fight until I had to fight it. You won, though, the board meeting. You kept control. For now. But they'll try again. They always do. She turned to look at him. Do you ever feel like you're fighting battles no one else can see? Like you're holding something together through sheer force of will and you can't let anyone know how hard it is? Ethan thought about single parenthood, about being the only parent Maya had, about nights when he'd been terrified he was failing her but couldn't show it because she needed him to be strong. Yes, he said simply, every day for the past 5 years. How do you manage it? I remember why it matters. Maya needs me. That's enough. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very softly, 4,632 people need me. I tell myself that's enough. But some days I'm not sure it is. Then maybe you need something else too. Something that's just for you, not for them. Like what? I don't know. What did you used to do before you became CEO? Before everything was about the company? I painted. Landscapes mostly. Nothing good, but I enjoyed it. She smiled sadly. I haven't touched a paintbrush in 3 years. Maybe you should. Maybe. She finished her coffee. Thank you for this. For making me take an actual lunch break. For treating me like a person instead of a position. That's what friends do. She looked at him sharply. Are we friends? I don't know, but Dr. Chen thinks you need one, and I'm apparently volunteering. Ethan stood, offered his hand to help her up. Come on, we should get back before people start wondering where their CEO disappeared to. They walked back to the building together, talking about nothing important. Maya's science project, the weather, a documentary about space exploration that they'd both seen. Normal conversation between normal people, as if titles and power dynamics didn't exist. But as they reached the lobby, reality reasserted itself. Claire straightened her shoulders, pulled her armor back into place, transformed from a person enjoying a park bench into the CEO of a billion-dollar company. Thank you, Ethan, she said formally. I'll see you at this afternoon's operations review. See you then, Ms. Rowe. He watched her walk toward the executive elevators, then headed to his own office. Whatever was forming between them, friendship, alliance, something else, it existed in stolen moments between the roles they had to play. And for now, that would have to be enough. 3 months into his new role, Ethan had transformed safety and operations at Morrison Industries in ways that surprised everyone, including himself. The overnight shift upgrades were complete, new lighting that made detail work possible, proper staffing ratios, equipment that matched day shift standards. Incident rates had dropped 43%. Jessica Wu's training overhaul was in full implementation, and new employee incidents were down 60%. Building 3 was undergoing comprehensive infrastructure improvements that would take another 2 months, but were already revealing problems that could have become catastrophic. But the real change was harder to quantify. Workers were reporting hazards without fear of blame. Supervisors were asking for help instead of hiding problems. Safety had stopped being something you did to avoid punishment and started being something you did because people mattered. Ethan stood in the manufacturing facility on a Wednesday afternoon, watching Maria Santos train a new employee on the press that used to have a loose safety guard. The guard was now properly secured, not because he'd ordered it, but because Maria had worked with engineering to redesign the mounting system based on her 8 years of experience. Her idea. Her solution. He'd just removed the barriers that prevented her from implementing it. Mr. Parker. Kenneth Morrison approached, looking more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen him. Got a minute? Always. What's up? I wanted to tell you something before the numbers come out tomorrow. This quarter's safety metrics are the best we've had in 15 years. Incident rate down 51% overall. Lost time injuries down 68%. Worker satisfaction surveys show 87% feel safe at work, up from 53% last quarter. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. That's because of your team. Your willingness to implement changes, to listen to workers, to prioritize safety over production shortcuts. It's because someone finally gave us the resources and authority to do what we've been trying to do for years. Kenneth extended his hand. Thank you for seeing what was broken and actually fixing it. They shook hands, and Ethan thought about that first 2 or 3 months ago, about Kenneth testing him to see if he'd actually listen, about how trust was built through action, not words. His phone buzzed. Claire, can you come to my office? Something's happened. The tone made his stomach drop. He texted back immediately. On my way. Claire's office door was closed when he arrived, which was unusual. Janet looked worried, which was more unusual. She waved him through without her usual cheerful greeting. Claire stood at her window, back to the door, shoulders tight with tension. Close the door, please. Ethan did, moving to stand beside her rather than across from her. What's wrong? The board is calling for a special review. They want to audit my leadership, question major decisions from the past year, and evaluate whether I'm still the right person to run this company. Her voice was controlled, but he heard the tremor underneath. They're using the excuse of upcoming contract negotiations, but we both know what this really is. Another attempt to remove you. Yes, led by the same people who tried last time, but now they have allies. Apparently, some shareholders are concerned about my unorthodox management style and questionable personnel decisions. She turned to face him. They're going to use you as evidence. An executive with no traditional credentials, promoted based on what they'll frame as personal favoritism rather than merit. Ethan felt ice in his veins. They're going to bring up that night. They don't know about that night, but they don't need to. The optics are bad enough. CEO promotes maintenance supervisor to executive position with no MBA, no management experience, reporting directly to her. They'll paint it as poor judgment at best, inappropriate favoritism at worst. Then I'll resign, remove their ammunition. No, Claire's voice was sharp. Absolutely not. You've done extraordinary work. The safety metrics alone justify your position 10 times over. I won't let you sacrifice your career because the board wants to play politics. Then what do we do? She moved to her desk, pulled out a folder. We fight. With data, with results, with evidence that every decision I've made has strengthened this company. Your hiring included. She handed him the folder. These are the quarterly reports showing safety improvements, cost savings, worker satisfaction increases, all traceable directly to initiatives you've implemented. Ethan scanned the numbers. They were even better than Kenneth had mentioned. 51% reduction in incidents meant fewer injuries, less lost productivity, lower insurance costs. The training program overhaul had reduced onboarding time while improving retention. Infrastructure investments were preventing failures that would have cost millions. This is solid, he said, but you know they'll still question the decision to hire me. Let them question. I'll defend it. Claire met his eyes. You saved this company money, improved worker safety, and changed our culture. That's not favoritism. That's good leadership recognizing talent where others missed it. When's the review? 2 weeks. They're bringing in an outside consulting firm to evaluate operations, interview executives, and make recommendations. She paused. They'll interview you. They'll ask about your qualifications, your relationship with me, how you got this position. You need to be ready. I'll tell them the truth, that I wrote a safety proposal. You read it. You asked to meet with me, and you offered me this role based on my vision for improving safety and operations. They'll push for more. They'll want to know about private meetings, personal interactions, anything they can twist into impropriety. Ethan thought about the hotel bar, about carrying her to her car, about staying through the night to make sure she was breathing, about lunch in the park, and conversations about loneliness and the cost of leadership, about the strange intimacy that had formed between them, not romantic, but deep and real, and impossible to explain in ways that wouldn't be misconstrued. Then we keep it simple, he said. Professional interactions, business decisions, results that speak for themselves. Anything else is none of their business. Ethan, if they dig deep enough, if they find out about that night, they won't. The hotel was nearly empty. We were careful. And even if they did find out, what would it prove? That you had a medical emergency and an employee helped you? That's not impropriety. That's human decency. Claire sank into her chair, some of the armor falling away. I'm tired of fighting, tired of justifying every decision, defending every choice, proving I deserve to lead my own company. I know, but you're not fighting alone anymore. Ethan sat across from her. You have an executive team that believes in you, 4,632 employees who depend on you, and one former maintenance supervisor who's not going to let them take you down without a fight. She smiled despite herself. One former maintenance supervisor who's become one of my most valuable executives. Who you trained well in the past 3 months. I didn't train you, I just gave you space to be who you already were. She pulled up something on her computer. James wants to meet with both of us tomorrow. He's building the financial case for my leadership, showing board members that under my tenure, the company's value has increased 42%. Employee retention is at record highs, and we're outperforming every competitor in our sector. What do you need from me? Keep doing what you're doing. The safety metrics are powerful evidence that my instincts about people are sound, but also, she hesitated. Be careful. If they're looking for ammunition, they'll scrutinize everything about you, your work, your background, your personal life. I don't want Maya caught in political crossfire. The mention of his daughter made Ethan's protective instincts flare. I don't think they would intentionally, but if they're digging into your history, asking about your credentials, they might stumble onto things you'd rather keep private. Claire's voice was gentle. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. Ethan thought about Maya's mother, about the divorce 5 years ago, about details he didn't advertise but weren't exactly secret. Nothing scandalous, just private. I appreciate the warning. I'll talk to my lawyer, make sure everything's documented properly. Good. And Ethan, thank you for standing with me on this. Where else would I stand? The meeting with James Chen the next day was intense. The CFO had built a comprehensive analysis of Morrison Industries' performance under Claire's leadership, complete with competitor comparisons, market analysis, and projections showing continued growth. Ethan's safety improvements featured prominently, not just as cost savings, but as evidence of Claire's ability to identify and solve problems others missed. The board's concern is that Claire makes decisions based on intuition rather than data, James explained. We need to show that her intuition is backed by results. Ethan's hiring is actually perfect for this. She saw potential in an unconventional candidate, and that candidate has delivered extraordinary outcomes. What about the optics? Ethan asked. The lack of traditional credentials? We lean into it, show that traditional credentials were exactly what wasn't working. You had real experience, ground truth knowledge, and the ability to connect with workers in ways MBA graduates can't. That's not a weakness. It's a strategic advantage. Claire nodded slowly. Frame it as innovative talent identification rather than questionable judgment. Exactly, and we have the metrics to back it up. James pulled up a comparison chart. Before Ethan, incident rates trending upward, safety costs increasing, worker satisfaction declining. After Ethan, incident rates down 51%, safety costs down 38%, worker satisfaction at record highs. Those numbers don't lie. They spent 3 hours preparing for every possible angle of attack, building responses to questions they hoped wouldn't be asked, documenting decisions that had seemed simple at the time but would now be dissected and analyzed. By the end, Ethan felt simultaneously prepared and exhausted. As he headed back to his office, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then decided that was cowardly. Hello? Mr. Parker, this is Catherine Walsh from Brennan Consulting. We've been retained by Morrison Industries Board to conduct a leadership review. I'd like to schedule time with you next week for an interview. Here we go, Ethan thought. Of course. When works for you? Wednesday at 2 p.m. We'll need approximately 90 minutes. The interview will cover your role, your qualifications, and your working relationship with Ms. Rowe. I'll be there. Do I need to prepare anything specific? Just be ready to discuss your background honestly and thoroughly. We'll be asking detailed questions about how you came to be in your current position. After she hung up, Ethan sat at his desk staring at his phone. Detailed questions, honest and thorough discussion. They were looking for inconsistencies, for evidence of impropriety, for anything that could be used against Claire. He pulled out his notebook and started writing every interaction with Claire that he could remember, from the hotel bar to today. Dates, contexts, witnesses when applicable, building a timeline that was accurate and defensible, that showed professional judgment rather than personal favoritism. His phone buzzed. Maya's school. His heart jumped. They only called during the day if something was wrong. Mr. Parker, this is Principal Edwards. Maya's fine, but we need you to come pick her up. She's been in a fight. A fight, Maya? His daughter who cried during sad movies and apologized to furniture when she bumped into it? Another student said some unkind things. Maya defended herself physically. We have a zero-tolerance policy. Ethan was already grabbing his keys. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He found Maya sitting in the principal's office, arms crossed, jaw set in a way that reminded him uncomfortably of himself when he was angry. She had a red mark on her cheek that would probably bruise. What happened? He asked, kneeling in front of her. Tyler said you only got your job because you're sleeping with your boss. He said everybody knows it, and you're a cheater, and Ms. Rowe is... Maya's voice cracked. He said bad things about her, really bad things, so I hit him. Ethan felt the world tilt. How does Tyler know about my job? Principal Edwards cleared her throat. Tyler's father works at Morrison Industries. Apparently there's been talk about your promotion and the upcoming board review. Some of that talk has filtered down to children. And rather than addressing the fact that Tyler was spreading malicious gossip, you're punishing my daughter for defending herself? We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. Violence? She's 9 years old and someone was attacking her father's character with lies. Ethan stood. Did you discipline Tyler for bullying? That's a separate conversation. It's the same conversation. You're teaching my daughter that standing up for herself and the people she loves is wrong, while letting the actual bully off with a separate conversation. Ethan took Maya's hand. We're leaving. If you want to suspend her, fine. But we both know what actually happened here. They walked to the truck in silence. Maya climbed in, buckled herself, and then burst into tears. I'm sorry, Daddy. I know I'm not supposed to hit people, but he was saying such awful things about you, and I just couldn't let him. Hey! Ethan pulled her into a hug. You didn't do anything wrong. Tyler was lying and you stood up for the truth. I'm proud of you. Really? Really? Though next time maybe use words before fists. I tried. He wouldn't stop. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Dad, is it true that people think you and Ms. Rowe are together? That you didn't earn your job? Ethan took a deep breath. Some people think that because they don't understand how I got promoted. But the truth is simple. I worked hard, I had good ideas, and Ms. Rowe recognized that. Everything else is just people making up stories because they're jealous or confused. But why would they think you're dating her? You never even talk about her at home. Because she's my boss, and I'm good at my job, and some people can't understand that without making it into something it's not. He started the truck. The world is complicated sometimes, kiddo. People see what they want to see rather than what's actually there. That's stupid. It really is. But that's why we have to be honest, work hard, and not let other people's opinions change who we are. They drove home, and Ethan made hot chocolate while Maya did homework at the kitchen table. Normal, ordinary, grounding. But his mind was racing. If rumors had spread enough that a 9-year-old at Maya's school had heard them, they were more widespread than he'd realized. His phone rang. Claire. Is Maya okay? Janet saw the school call come through on your calendar. She's fine. She punched a kid who was spreading rumors about us. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, what kind of rumors? The kind we were worried about. Apparently talk about the board review has spread, and people are speculating about why I got promoted. Oh no, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to affect Maya. It's not your fault. It's the fault of people who'd rather gossip than look at actual results. He watched Maya through the doorway, solving math problems with fierce concentration. But it means we need to be even more careful. If this has reached elementary schools, it's everywhere. I'll have HR send out a company-wide memo about professionalism and appropriate workplace discussion. We can't stop people from talking, but we can make it clear that spreading unfounded rumors is unacceptable. That might make it worse. Draw more attention to it. Then what do you suggest? Ethan thought for a moment. We ignore it. We let the work speak for itself. We go into that review with data and results and proof that every decision you made was sound. And we trust that truth is stronger than gossip. I hope you're right. Me too. The next week crawled by. Ethan prepared for his interview with the consulting firm, reviewed every decision he'd made in the past 3 months, and documented outcomes with the precision of someone who knew he was building a legal defense. The safety metrics continued to improve. 53% reduction in incidents now, with Building 3's infrastructure upgrades preventing what would have been a major equipment failure. Wednesday arrived with gray skies that matched Ethan's mood. He dressed carefully, suit instead of his usual business casual tie that Maya had helped him pick out that morning. Professional, competent, unimpeachable. The interview was held in a conference room he'd never been to, with Catherine Walsh and 2 associates who looked like they'd been bred in MBA programs. They smiled professionally, offered coffee he declined, and got straight to business. Mr. Parker, thank you for meeting with us. As I mentioned on the phone, we're conducting a comprehensive review of Morrison Industries' leadership and operations. Your role is of particular interest given your unconventional path to an executive position. Happy to answer any questions, Ethan said calmly. Let's start with your background. You worked in maintenance for 5 years before being promoted to head of safety and operations. What qualifications did you have for such a significant jump? 15 years total experience in facilities management across multiple industries, deep understanding of how operational systems actually function versus how they're documented, and the ability to identify systemic problems that others miss because they're too focused on individual incidents. But no management degree? No formal safety certification? No MBA, correct. But I have OSHA 30-hour certification, multiple technical certifications in electrical and mechanical systems, and I've completed over 200 hours of professional development in safety management and operational efficiency. Ethan pulled out a folder. I brought documentation if you'd like to see it. Catherine took the folder, skimmed the contents. This is more extensive than we were led to believe. Who suggested you pursue these certifications? I did. I saw gaps in my knowledge and filled them. That's what you do when you care about doing your job well. Tell us about your safety proposal, the one that apparently caught Miss Rowe's attention. For the next 40 minutes, Ethan walked them through the proposal, the observations that inspired it, the research behind it, the implementation strategy. He showed them the before and after metrics, the cost-benefit analysis, the worker satisfaction data. They asked tough questions, pushed back on assumptions, and tried to find holes in his logic. But the numbers didn't lie. Ethan's initiatives had saved Morrison Industries over $2 million in direct costs while making the workplace demonstrably safer. That was hard to argue with. Let's talk about your relationship with Ms. Rowe, Catherine said, shifting gears. How would you characterize it? Professional. She's my boss. I report to her weekly, we collaborate on strategic initiatives, and she provides guidance on executive leadership. But you also have personal interactions, lunches, private meetings. Occasional working lunches, yes. Private meetings are typically about sensitive operational issues that require discretion. That's standard for executive-level work. Have you ever socialized outside of work? Ethan kept his expression neutral. No. Never? Not once in the past 3 months? Our interactions are professional. If we've had conversations about non-work topics, it's been in the context of workplace discussions, the same way any colleagues might talk about their weekends or families during a work lunch. It wasn't technically a lie. Their lunch in the park had been a work lunch, even if the conversation had been personal. The hotel bar had been before he was in this position. Everything else had been genuinely professional. Catherine made a note. Some employees have suggested that your promotion was based on personal favoritism rather than merit. How do you respond to that? I'd point them to the safety metrics. 53% reduction in incidents, 38% reduction in safety costs, record high worker satisfaction. Those aren't the results of favoritism. Those are the results of giving someone the resources and authority to solve problems they've been identifying for years. But Ms. Rowe could have hired someone with traditional credentials who might have achieved similar results. Maybe. But she didn't. She took a chance on someone who understood the work from the ground up, who could talk to line workers and executives with equal credibility, who saw safety as a cultural issue rather than a compliance checklist. Ethan leaned forward slightly. That was a strategic decision, not a personal one, and the results prove it was the right decision. The interview continued for another 30 minutes, circling back to the same questions in different forms, looking for inconsistencies that Ethan didn't give them. Finally, Catherine closed her laptop. Thank you for your time, Mr. Parker. We'll include your input in our final report to the board. Can I ask you something? Ethan said as they were gathering their materials. Of course. What would you consider proof that my hiring was merit-based rather than favoritism? Catherine thought for a moment. Sustained results over time, peer recognition, evidence that the decision-making process was sound even if unconventional. Then I hope you'll talk to the people I work with. Kenneth Morrison, who's run the manufacturing plant for 30 years. Richard Chen, who applied for my position and now works with me as a partner rather than a rival. The workers on overnight shift whose incident rate has been cut in half. They'll tell you whether I earned this role or whether I was just someone's favorite. Something shifted in Catherine's expression. Not quite approval, but respect. We will. Thank you for the suggestion. After they left, Ethan sat alone in the conference room, adrenaline slowly draining away. He'd done what he could. Told the truth, presented the data, let the work speak for itself. Now it was out of his hands. His phone buzzed. Claire, how did it go? As well as it could, he texted back. They asked the questions we expected. I gave them the answers we prepared. Did they seem convinced? Hard to tell, but I told them to talk to the people I work with. If anyone can prove I earned this job, it's them. Her response took a minute. Thank you. For fighting for this. For fighting for me. We're fighting for the same thing, he replied. A company that values people over politics. The next week was agony. The consulting firm interviewed other executives, toured facilities, reviewed financial data. Ethan went about his work trying not to think about Catherine Walsh and her associates deciding his fate. He implemented the final phase of Building 3's infrastructure upgrades. He worked with Jessica on expanding the training program to include leadership development for supervisors. He had lunch with Claire in the park once more, both of them carefully not discussing the review. Maya's science project won first place at the school fair, he mentioned instead. The tectonic plate model was apparently very impressive. That's wonderful. She should be very proud. Claire smiled. You're raising an exceptional child, Ethan. I'm trying. Some days I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. The fact that you worry about that means you're probably doing it better than you think. She looked out at the trees. I've been thinking about what you said, about needing something that's just for me. And? I bought paints, canvas, brushes, the whole setup. It's sitting in my dining room, still in the packages, waiting for me to be brave enough to actually use them. What are you afraid of? That I'll have forgotten how? That it won't bring me joy the way it used to? That I've changed so much that the things I loved before don't fit who I am now? Only one way to find out. She turned to look at him. Would you come over Saturday afternoon? Help me get started? I know it's weird to ask, but I think I need someone there. Someone who won't judge if I'm terrible at this now. Ethan thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea, the ongoing review, the rumors, the careful boundaries they'd been maintaining. But he also thought about Claire alone in that hotel bar, about the cost of isolation, about Dr. Chen asking him to be her friend. What time? He asked. 2 o'clock? I'll order lunch. I'll be there. Saturday arrived warm and bright, the kind of spring day that made you believe in new beginnings. Ethan dropped Maya at her friend's house, another science project collaboration, and drove to Claire's house on Oakmont Drive. It looked different in daylight and good weather, less imposing and more like a home where someone actually lived. Claire answered the door in jeans and a paint-stained shirt that looked like it dated from college. Come in. Fair warning, I have no idea what I'm doing. The dining room had been transformed into a makeshift art studio. Canvas propped on an easel, paints organized by color, brushes of various sizes, drop cloths protecting the expensive hardwood floor. It looked hopeful and terrifying in equal measure. When did you set all this up? Ethan asked. Last night at midnight when I couldn't sleep. Apparently 3 a.m. is when I become brave enough to commit to hobbies. She stood in front of the blank canvas like it was a firing squad. I thought this would feel more natural. When's the last time you painted? College. Maybe a little bit during grad school, but not seriously. So you're essentially starting over. That's okay. Everyone starts over sometimes. Ethan picked up a brush. What do you want to paint? I don't know. I used to paint landscapes, but everything I'm imagining looks corporate. Like I'll end up painting quarterly reports instead of trees. Then don't plan it. Just start. Put paint on canvas and see what happens. That's terrifying. Good art usually is. Claire picked up a brush, dipped it in green paint, and made a single stroke across the canvas. Then another. Then she stopped. This is awful. It's 2 brush strokes. You can't judge it yet. Ethan moved to stand beside her. What are you feeling when you paint? Anxious, like I'm doing it wrong, because you're thinking about the outcome instead of the process. Stop trying to make something good. Just make something honest. She looked at him for a long moment, then back at the canvas. This time she painted without stopping, long strokes, color mixing and blending, shapes emerging that might have been trees or clouds or just emotion translated into pigment. Ethan watched, saying nothing, letting her rediscover something she'd lost. 40 minutes later, she stepped back from a painting that was strange and beautiful and nothing like traditional landscapes. Abstract shapes suggested forests, color combinations evoked feeling more than place, and the whole thing pulsed with energy that had clearly been trapped inside her for years. "I have no idea what this is," she said, breathless. "It's honest. That's what it is." She laughed, and it was the first time Ethan had heard her laugh without restraint. "It's terrible. It's a first attempt after 3 years of not painting. It's supposed to be terrible, but you finished it. That's what matters." They ordered lunch, ate it in her kitchen while the painting dried, and talked about things that had nothing to do with Morrison Industries. Maya's science fair victory, the documentary about space exploration, Claire's mother, who died when she was 12, and who she still missed in unexpected moments, Ethan's sister, who'd recovered from her bee sting allergy and was now a nurse helping other people through emergencies. "Thank you for this," Claire said as Ethan prepared to leave, "for pushing me to actually use the paints, for not judging the terrible landscape that doesn't look like a landscape. It looks like freedom. That's better than a landscape." She walked him to the door, then hesitated. "Ethan, whatever happens with the board review, whatever they decide about my leadership or your position, I want you to know that meeting you changed something for me. Reminded me that there are people who see beyond titles and politics to the human being underneath. You did the same for me. Reminded me that taking risks on people is worth it." They stood in the doorway, and for a moment the air felt heavy with things unsaid. Then Claire stepped back, professional armor sliding into place. "I'll see you Monday. The consulting firm is presenting their findings to the board. We'll be ready." Monday morning arrived with the weight of Judgment Day. Ethan wore his best suit, reviewed his notes one final time, and kissed Maya goodbye with the awareness that his life might change significantly in the next few hours. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Ethan wasn't invited, only Claire and the executive team would be present, but he sat in his office, unable to focus on anything else. Janet brought him coffee he didn't drink. James stopped by with reassurances that felt hollow. Margaret from HR offered to pray for them, which Ethan appreciated even though he wasn't sure what he believed anymore. At 11:30, his phone buzzed. "Claire, we won." Ethan's hand shook as he typed back. "Details?" The consulting firm's report was unequivocal. "My leadership has strengthened every metric they examined. Your hiring was cited as evidence of innovative talent identification. The board voted unanimously to affirm my position and reject the review's premise." Ethan closed his eyes, relief washing over him so intensely it was almost painful. "It's over then. It's over." The response came quickly. "Can you come to my office? I want to tell you something." He found her standing at her window, looking out at the city that she'd fought to serve. When she turned, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "They didn't just affirm my leadership, they commended it. Said that my ability to identify and develop talent was one of my greatest strengths, that Morrison Industries had never been stronger or more stable." She laughed, and it sounded like disbelief and joy mixed together. They specifically mentioned the safety improvements, the cultural changes, the way worker satisfaction has transformed the company. "That's incredible, Claire. It's more than incredible. It's validation. 3 years of fighting, of second-guessing myself, of wondering if I was doing anything right. And they said I was. They said I am." She moved closer to him. "And you're a big part of why. The work you've done, the changes you've implemented, that gave them concrete proof that my instincts about people are sound. You gave me the opportunity. I just did what I've always known needed to be done. That's exactly why it worked. You weren't trying to prove yourself or play politics. You were just trying to make people safer." She pulled an envelope from her desk. "The board also approved my recommendation for executive compensation adjustments. You're getting a significant raise and increased equity stake. You've earned it 100 times over." Ethan took the envelope, opened it, and felt his heart stop. The numbers were transformative, enough to move to a better neighborhood, to put money away for Maya's college, to stop worrying about every unexpected expense. This is too much, he said quietly. It's market rate for someone who's saved the company over $2 million and fundamentally changed how we approach safety and operations. Actually, it's probably less than you're worth. Claire smiled. Accept it, Ethan. You've earned it. Thank you. For everything. For seeing something in me I wasn't sure was there. It was always there. You just needed someone to give you space to show it. They stood in her office, sunlight streaming through windows, and Ethan thought about that night in the hotel bar. About how one choice, to see a person in distress rather than a powerful CEO, had led to this moment. About how trust and competence and human decency could be more powerful than credentials and politics. What happens now, he asked. Now we keep building, keep improving, keep proving that a company can be profitable and principled at the same time. She extended her hand. Partners? Partners. He shook her hand, and it felt like a promise. The news spread through Morrison Industries like wildfire. Claire's leadership affirmed. The review concluded with commendation rather than criticism. And Ethan Parker, the maintenance supervisor turned executive, vindicated in ways that silenced even his harshest critics. Kenneth Morrison called him that afternoon. Heard the news. Congratulations. Thank you. Couldn't have done it without your support. You could have, but I'm glad I got to be part of it. A pause. You changed things here, Ethan. Not just safety metrics, but culture. People feel valued now. They feel heard. That's worth more than any number on a spreadsheet. Richard Chen stopped by his office with similar sentiments. I was wrong about you. I thought you were unqualified, that Ms. Rowe had made a mistake. But you proved that experience matters more than credentials and that the best leaders are the ones who remember what it's like to do the actual work. Even Robert Daniels sent a grudging email acknowledging that the safety improvements had exceeded expectations and that Ethan's unconventional background had proven to be an asset rather than a liability. But the moment that mattered most came that evening when Ethan picked up Maya from school. She ran to the truck, backpack bouncing, face bright with excitement. Dad! Tyler apologized. He said his dad told him he was wrong about you, that you're actually really good at your job and helped make the company better. He feels bad about what he said. That's good. Apologies are important. I know, so I accepted it, and we're friends now. She buckled her seatbelt. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? With your new job and everything? Ethan thought about the past 3 months. The stress, the politics, the constant pressure to prove himself, but also the impact. Workers safer, systems improved, a company transformed, and most importantly, the knowledge that he was building something that mattered for Maya's future. Yeah, kiddo, I'm happy. Good, because you deserve to be happy. You're a good dad and a good person, and you work really hard. Thank you, Maya. That means more than you know. They drove home through a city that felt different now, full of possibility instead of limitation, promise instead of fear. Ethan thought about Claire painting in her dining room, about Kenneth Morrison's pride in transformed safety metrics, about 4,632 people going home to their families because someone finally made their workplace safer. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan stood in his small apartment and thought about how far he'd come. From a maintenance supervisor fixing broken pipes to an executive changing company culture. From a single father barely making ends meet to someone with financial security and professional respect. But what mattered most wasn't the title or the money. It was knowing that when he'd seen someone in distress in a hotel bar, when he'd chosen compassion over protocol and trust over fear, he'd set in motion something bigger than himself. His phone buzzed. Claire, thank you. For everything. For saving my life that night. For standing with me through the review. For being exactly who you are. He texted back. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove what I could do. For trusting your instincts even when everyone questioned them. Her response came quickly. My father used to say that the best leaders are the ones who remember what it's like to need help and choose to give it anyway. You taught me that lesson when I needed it most. Ethan smiled, set down his phone, and looked at the photo of Maya on his bookshelf, her science fair trophy held high, pride radiating from every inch of her 9-year-old frame. This was what he'd been fighting for. This future, this security, this proof that integrity and competence mattered more than credentials and pedigree. 6 months later, Morrison Industries won a National Safety Award for Workplace Excellence. The ceremony was held in a hotel ballroom with 500 people in attendance. Claire gave a speech about culture change and leadership courage. Ethan accepted the award on behalf of the safety team, thanking the workers who'd trusted him with their ideas and the supervisors who'd implemented changes they'd been advocating for years. But the moment he'd remember forever came after the ceremony, when an older worker from Building 3 approached him with calloused hands and grateful eyes. "Mr. Parker, I just wanted to say thank you. I've worked here for 28 years, and this is the first time I've felt like someone actually cared whether I made it home safe at the end of the day. You changed that. You made this a place where my grandkids can be proud of where their grandfather works." Ethan shook the man's hand, throat tight with emotion. "You made it possible, all of you. I just removed the barriers." As he drove home that night, a ward in the passenger seat, Ethan thought about the journey from that hotel bar to this moment, about how one choice to see humanity over hierarchy had transformed 2 lives and touched thousands more. Maya was still awake when he got home, working on yet another science project. She looked up when he walked in, saw the award, and grinned. "You won." "The team won. I just accepted it for them." "Don't be modest, Dad. You're amazing at your job. Everyone knows it now." She came over, hugged him tight. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of you too, kiddo, for being brave and kind and smart." "We're a good team," Maya said. "The best." Ethan tucked her in an hour later, watching her drift off to sleep with the same sense of wonder he'd felt since the day she was born. This was what mattered. Not awards or accolades, but the knowledge that he was building a life worth living, a future worth fighting for, a legacy measured in moments of human connection rather than professional achievement. His phone buzzed one last time. "Claire, congratulations on the award. You earned it. And thank you again for that night in the hotel bar, for seeing me, for helping me, for reminding me that strength and vulnerability aren't opposites." Ethan typed back, "Thank you for trusting me with the chance to prove what I could do, for believing that sometimes the most qualified person is the one who remembers what it's like to need help." Her response was simple. "Friends?" He smiled. "Friends." And in that moment, Ethan Parker understood that the greatest victories weren't about titles or awards or professional validation. They were about choosing compassion in moments of crisis, trusting instinct over protocol, and believing that human decency was the foundation of everything else that mattered. He'd walked into a hotel bar 3 months ago as a maintenance supervisor worried about a broken radiator hose. He'd walked out as someone who'd saved a life, changed a company, and proven that integrity and competence could triumph over politics and pedigree. But more than that, he'd proven to himself that the person he'd always been, the father who put Maya first, the worker who saw problems others missed, the human being who chose kindness when no one was watching, was exactly the person he was meant to be. And that was worth more than any award in any ballroom could ever represent. The story that had begun with fear and uncertainty ended with hope and purpose. Claire Rowe continued leading Morrison Industries with wisdom earned through struggle and validated by results. Ethan Parker continued transforming safety culture, one system and one relationship at a time. And Maya Parker grew up knowing that her father was a hero, not because he saved a CEO, but because he chose kindness when it mattered most. Sometimes the most important choice you make is the one to help a stranger in distress. Sometimes that choice changes everything. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it changes you into exactly who you were meant to become.